Scientists X-rayed the skeleton of a 130,000-year-old man. What they discovered next was terrifying. What would happen if one day archaeologists dug deep beneath the earth and uncovered secrets capable of completely changing everything we know about history? What caused a Neanderthal man to remain at the bottom of a deep pit for more than 130,000 years? Why have dozens of human skeletons been discovered inside ancient temples, wells, and mysterious mass burial sites? Were the children buried alongside powerful figures in ancient civilizations truly sacrificial victims? And how could a small clay vessel tell the story of deadly battles that took place nearly 2,000 years ago? You know, despite centuries of research, archaeology remains one of humanity's most mysterious fields of study. Every time a layer of ancient soil is uncovered, new discoveries emerge, bringing with them a flood of questions that even scientists cannot fully answer. There are skeletons whose exact causes of death remain unknown. There are artifacts that seem to tell stories never recorded in history. And there are archaeological sites that have sparked years of debate among experts, yet still have no definitive explanation. Hello, and welcome back to Ancient History. In today's video, we'll explore some of the most shocking and unexplained archaeological discoveries ever found. From ancient human remains shrouded in mystery and strange ceremonial temples, to forgotten battlefields and artifacts that have astonished researchers. Each discovery is like a missing piece of the past. Together, they help us see the ancient world more clearly, while at the same time revealing secrets that even today, no one has been able to fully unravel. So, are you ready to join me on a journey back through time to uncover some of the strangest mysteries waiting ahead? If so, let's begin right now with our very first discovery. The skeleton of a man trapped in a deadly pit for 130,000 years. Imagine walking across a wild, untamed landscape more than 130,000 years ago. There were no roads, no lights, and no signs of civilization anywhere around you. One wrong step, and you could disappear from the world forever. That is exactly what happened to a Neanderthal man whom scientists today call Altamura man. His story began with a tragic accident, yet it ultimately became one of the most astonishing archaeological discoveries ever made. More than 130,000 years ago, this man is believed to have accidentally fallen into a massive deep pit in what is now the town of Altamura in southern Italy. No one knows exactly how it happened. Perhaps he was hunting, searching for food, or simply traveling across land he knew well. But the deadly pit lay hidden from view. The most terrifying part was not the fall itself. According to researchers, Altamura man likely survived the initial fall. However, he became trapped at the bottom of the deep shaft with no way to escape. No one came to rescue him. There was no chance of survival. Eventually, he died alone in the cold darkness beneath the earth. As tens of thousands of years passed, nature quietly concealed the site. Sediment gradually filled and sealed the original pit, creating an underground chamber that was nearly impossible to access. Ironically, this process protected the skeleton from predators and outside disturbances. As a result, Altamura man became one of the most complete and best-preserved Neanderthal skeletons ever discovered. It was not until 1993 that explorers first spotted his skull inside a complex underground cave system. Reaching the site, however, proved to be an enormous challenge. Researchers had to squeeze through extremely narrow passages for about 20 minutes before arriving at the location. Because of these difficult conditions, scientific study of the remains remained severely limited for decades. Fortunately, modern technology has opened new doors in recent years. Rather than excavating the skeleton directly, experts have used high-resolution photography, X-ray imaging, and detailed video recordings to examine different parts of the remains. Research published in the journal PLOS has revealed new insights into this ancient individual. Earlier, in 2016, DNA analysis taken from a shoulder bone confirmed that Altamura man was a Neanderthal who lived approximately 130,000 to 172,000 years ago. However, what especially captured scientists' attention this time was his jaw and teeth. The findings showed that Altamura man was an adult and had lost 2 teeth before his death. This is a relatively rare discovery because Neanderthals are known for having exceptionally strong teeth. Some exposed tooth roots suggest that he may have suffered from periodontal disease. Hardened tartar deposits were also found on several lower molars. These teeth tell more than just the story of his health, they also reveal how Neanderthals survived. Scientists observed that Altamura man's front teeth were significantly larger than those of modern humans. Neanderthals often used their front teeth as a third hand, gripping pieces of meat or animal hides while cutting them with stone tools. The wear patterns on Altamura man's teeth indicate that he frequently engaged in this behavior as well. Today, despite years of study, scientists still have not been able to fully access the skeleton. A thick layer of calcite minerals covers much of the skull and bones. To uncover more of the secrets hidden within the remains, researchers hope that future technology may allow them to remove part, or perhaps all, of the skeleton from the deep underground pit. Yet regardless of what happens next, one thing is certain. After more than 130,000 years, the man who vanished into darkness continues to tell his story, not through words, but through every bone, every tooth, and every mystery that still waits to be uncovered by science. 1,000-year-old Viking grave containing the remains of a woman crushed beneath stones and her child buried in a terrifying position. You know, the world of archaeology is fascinating. Some ancient graves simply tell the story of a life that has come to an end, but others leave archaeologists searching for answers for decades without ever reaching a final conclusion. And the grave we are about to explore is one of those mysteries. Hidden beneath the soil of Denmark for more than 1,000 years, this burial site concealed the remains of two individuals whose burial circumstances were extraordinarily unusual. An elderly woman lay beneath two massive stones placed on her chest and leg. Beside her was a man buried in a strangely distorted position, with evidence suggesting that he may have been hanged before being placed in the grave. What makes this discovery even more remarkable is that, after years of research, scientists found that these two individuals were not a master and slave, as originally believed. They were actually mother and son. The story began in 1981, when archaeologists excavated an ancient Viking grave north of the city of Roskilde, Denmark. The burial site was named the Gerdrup grave, and from the very beginning, it attracted significant attention from researchers. Inside the grave were two skeletons buried together in the same burial chamber. However, the way they had been laid to rest was highly unusual. The man, estimated to have been between 35 and 40 years old, was lying on his back, but his body appeared twisted in a puzzling manner. When experts carefully examined the positions of his skull and ankles, they noticed several indications that his legs had once been bound together. His neck also showed signs of severe trauma, leading to the theory that he may have been executed by hanging before burial. Yet the mystery did not end there. Lying beside him was the skeleton of a woman approximately 60 years old. Two large stones had been deliberately placed on her chest and right leg. Researchers noted that this burial practice was not unique. Similar graves have been discovered in Denmark, Sweden, and Iceland, where bodies were found pinned down with stones in much the same way. However, the true purpose of this practice remains a major mystery to this day. Initially, archaeologists believed the woman may have been a noble figure, while the man was a servant or slave buried alongside his mistress after her death. This theory gained additional support when an object resembling a spear was discovered near the woman. In Viking society, weapons were traditionally associated with men and the warrior class, but modern technology would completely change the story. The latest DNA analysis revealed that the two skeletons were actually related as mother and son. This surprising discovery overturned many earlier theories and raised a host of new questions. If they were close family members, why were they buried at the same time? Why was the mother weighed down by heavy stones? And what exactly happened to her son? As researchers continued their investigations, they noticed striking similarities between the Gerdrup grave and a famous Icelandic tale from the Middle Ages. In that legend, a sorceress named Katla was sentenced to death by stoning, while her son Odd was executed by hanging. The similarities were so remarkable that scientists began asking a new question. Could the woman in the Gerdrup grave have once been regarded as a witch? And could the spear-like object found beside her actually have been a ritual staff used in mystical ceremonies? Of course, no evidence strong enough to confirm this theory has ever been found. Some researchers have even considered the possibility that the man was never murdered at all and may have died of natural causes. Yet even if that theory is correct, the mystery of the Gerdrup grave remains unsolved. There is only one fact that scientists have been able to confirm with certainty. The mother and son were buried at the same time. The soil layers above the grave clearly demonstrate this, but the biggest question has remained unanswered for more than 1,000 years. What happened that led a mother and her son to be laid to rest together in this strange grave? Was it an execution, an ancient ritual, or a tragic story that history has accidentally forgotten? What do you think the answer might be? Let us know in the comments below, and let's discuss this fascinating mystery together. 24 skeletons of 10th century warriors, buried with weapons, leave archaeologists astonished. As you know, history sometimes reveals itself in ways no one could ever expect. Some secrets remain hidden beneath the earth for thousands of years until one day they are unexpectedly uncovered by people who are not archaeologists at all. And the story we are about to explore began in exactly that way. While construction workers were installing a gas pipeline through a quiet rural area of Poland, they accidentally stumbled upon a doorway leading back more than 1,000 years into the past. No one could have imagined that beneath their feet lay the final resting place of people who had lived during one of the most turbulent periods in European history. When the first signs of graves appeared, construction was immediately halted and local authorities were notified. Before long, archaeologists arrived at the site in Borkowo and began an emergency excavation. At first, they assumed they had discovered an ordinary ancient burial ground, but the deeper they dug, the more astonished the experts became. Beneath layers of soil that had remained undisturbed for centuries was a cemetery dating back to the 10th century. One skeleton after another gradually emerged, each carrying a story that had never been told. In total, archaeologists uncovered 25 male skeletons, 24 of which had been buried with various types of weapons. This was an exceptionally rare discovery, as not every medieval cemetery contains such a large number of warriors interred in this distinctive manner. The find immediately raised a series of questions. Who were these men? Why were they buried with weapons? And what brought them all together in the same location? Based on preliminary dating results, researchers believe the remains may date back to the reign of Duke Mieszko I, the ruler widely regarded as the founder of a unified Polish state, who ruled from 960 to 992. Of course, this remains only a hypothesis, but if it proves correct, the men buried in the cemetery may have been warriors who served under this legendary duke. They could have been elite fighters who participated in battles to defend the territory or helped build a nation that was still in the process of forming. However, what particularly captured the attention of researchers was not just the human remains. Inside the graves, archaeologists also discovered a large number of valuable grave goods. Sharp arrowheads, battle axes, blades, metal rings, and even strings of red agate beads had been placed beside the deceased. These artifacts suggest that these were not ordinary members of society. They may have been warriors who also held positions of status or possessed considerable wealth for their time. The more archaeologists studied the cemetery, the more unusual features they discovered. According to the customs of many pagan communities of that era, the dead were often buried with personal belongings and valuable possessions. Early Christians, on the other hand, generally followed different burial traditions. What makes this cemetery especially fascinating is that it appears to show evidence of both worlds. On one hand, the deceased were buried intact rather than cremated. This was a characteristic commonly associated with Christian traditions, which were gradually spreading throughout the region at the time. On the other hand, the practice of burying the dead with numerous weapons and grave goods clearly reflects long-standing pagan customs. This blend of traditions has led researchers to propose that the cemetery was established during an important period of religious and cultural transition in the region. Yet the greatest mystery lies in the arrangement of the graves themselves. Typically, medieval cemeteries were organized in relatively orderly rows, but at Borkowo, everything seems quite different. The graves appear to be distributed in a seemingly random pattern, with no obvious order or structure. This has left even the most experienced experts puzzled. Could this be the resting place of a group of warriors buried after a major battle? Or was it a community living through a period of transition, when old beliefs were gradually giving way to a new religion? To this day, the answer remains buried deep in the past. But one thing is certain. This accidental discovery beneath a construction site has opened an exciting new chapter in history, helping us better understand the people who lived more than 1,000 years ago. And who knows, perhaps the cemetery's greatest secrets are still waiting to be uncovered in future excavations. That certainly seems possible because history has always had a way of surprising us, hasn't it? 336 ancient weapons from the legendary Battle of Manzikert discovered beneath the soil of Turkey. Some battles have changed the fate of entire nations. Some battlefields once echoed with the thunder of horse hooves, the clash of swords and spears, and the battle cries of tens of thousands of soldiers. Yet as time passed, everything gradually disappeared. Fields once scarred by war returned to their peaceful state, while memories of those conflicts survived only in the pages of history books. But what would happen if one day the very ground itself began returning perfectly preserved evidence of a battle fought nearly 1,000 years ago? That is exactly the story astonishing archaeologists and historians in Turkey today. The story begins in the Malazgirt district, a region located in eastern Turkey. It was here that archaeologists carried out what has been described as an exceptionally important excavation. As you may know, this is no ordinary location. Malazgirt was the site of the famous Battle of Manzikert, one of the most significant battles in the history of the region. It was here that Sultan Alp Arslan, the second sultan of the powerful Seljuk Empire, achieved a decisive victory that opened an entirely new chapter in the history of Anatolia and the medieval Islamic world. For centuries, historians could only imagine the battle through ancient written records. They knew that tens of thousands of soldiers had once faced each other on this battlefield. They knew that blood had been shed on this land. Yet direct physical evidence from the battlefield itself remained extremely rare. That is why the excavation conducted by specialists from Mulla Sitka Koçman University produced results that far exceeded expectations. As layer after layer of soil was carefully removed, ancient metal objects gradually began to emerge. At first, only a few scattered fragments were uncovered, but the deeper archaeologists dug, the more astonishing the discoveries became. In total, researchers uncovered 336 military-related artifacts, including arrowheads, spearheads, and numerous other metal objects. According to preliminary assessments, the majority of these artifacts appear to be directly connected to the famous Battle of Manzikert. The discoveries did not stop there. Experts also unearthed a wide variety of additional military items, including maces, axes, daggers, fragments of broken swords, horseshoes, and even the nails used to secure horseshoes. These findings are giving researchers a far more realistic understanding of the equipment, tactics, and combat conditions of medieval armies. Even more remarkable, the excavation revealed another historical treasure. Nearly 1,000 ancient coins were discovered throughout the area. Most of them date to the Byzantine period, the empire that served as the Seljuks' greatest rival during that era. These coins are not only helping archaeologists establish the site's chronology, but are also providing valuable information about economic activity, trade networks, and political power during this turbulent period of history. However, the discovery that moved many people the most was probably not the weapons or the coins. During their research, archaeologists also uncovered 51 graves dating to the 12th century. Many experts believe these burials are directly or indirectly connected to the military events that once unfolded around the Manzikert battlefield. These human remains serve as perhaps the clearest evidence of the true cost of war. Behind every grave was a person who once lived, fought, and had loved ones waiting for them at home. Nearly 1,000 years later, they still rest in the place where history was written through bloodshed and courage. According to researchers, it is the combination of military artifacts and human remains that has created the most important foundation for this archaeological project. Thanks to these unprecedented discoveries, experts are gradually reconstructing the most accurate picture yet of the legendary Battle of Manzikert. And perhaps the most astonishing part of all is that after lying buried beneath the earth for nearly a millennium, this battlefield still preserves enough evidence to tell its story to the modern world. 77 skeletons, hidden beneath a 900-year-old city, reveal secrets about the end of the Viking Age. What do you think would happen if, beneath the busy streets of a modern city, there lay an ancient cemetery that had been forgotten for nearly 1,000 years? And what if the skeletons resting quietly beneath the ground could do more than tell us about the people who once lived there? What if they could help unlock one of the most important transitional periods in Northern European history? If you don't have an answer yet, then join me on a journey to Denmark, where an unexpected discovery has opened a doorway back to the final days of the Viking Age, and at the same time helped answer those very questions. The story began when archaeologists conducted an excavation at the site of St. Olaf's Kirke, also known as St. Olaf's Church, located near the center of the city of Aarhus on the Jutland Peninsula. At first, the project was simply a routine archaeological survey required before new construction could begin. However, no one expected that beneath what appeared to be ordinary soil lay a piece of history that had remained buried for centuries. As layer after layer of earth was removed, the first signs of an ancient cemetery began to emerge. Even more surprising was the growing number of discoveries. By the time the excavation concluded on October 30th, archaeologists had uncovered a total of 77 skeletons. Dating analysis revealed that these individuals had been buried approximately 900 years ago, during the medieval period, a time when Danish society was undergoing profound cultural and religious transformations. According to archaeologist Mads Raven of the Mosgaard Museum in Aarhus, one particularly important detail is that the excavated area represents only a small portion of the original cemetery. He believes that many more human remains are still buried beneath the surrounding streets, buildings, and modern infrastructure. In other words, beneath present-day Aarhus, there may still exist an entire lost world belonging to some of the city's earliest inhabitants. But what excites researchers most is not the number of skeletons that were discovered, it is the stories they silently preserve. By studying the burial positions, grave characteristics, and physical evidence found on the remains, experts determined that most of the individuals buried here were Christians. However, other evidence suggests that some people still carried traces of ancient Norse pagan beliefs. Think about what that means for a moment. Doesn't it suggest that this cemetery was used during a period when two major belief systems existed side by side? On one hand were the traditional Viking beliefs that had been passed down through generations. On the other was Christianity, which was rapidly expanding and gradually becoming the dominant religion throughout the region. This intersection of cultures and faiths is precisely what makes the discovery such a valuable historical record of a pivotal transition in Northern European history. Researchers explain that St. Olav's Church is the oldest Christian site ever discovered in Aarhus. The church developed during the same period that Norse paganism was declining and the Viking Age was coming to an end in 1066. It was a time when society itself was changing, from people's way of life and worldview to their spiritual beliefs. According to historical records, the church was built around the 12th century and was named after Olav Haraldsson, the famous king of Norway in the 11th century. After converting to Christianity, he became an important symbol of the faith and was later canonized as a saint. However, after centuries of change and upheaval, the church was eventually abandoned when the choir section of the structure collapsed in 1548. One of the most significant clues uncovered by archaeologists comes from the way the deceased were buried. Unlike typical Viking graves, which often contained valuable grave goods such as weapons, jewelry, and personal belongings, the graves found here contained almost no accompanying artifacts. This is a highly characteristic feature of medieval Christian burial practices. In addition, all of the skeletons were positioned in the same orientation. Their heads faced west, while their feet pointed east. This was a common burial tradition in medieval Christianity and reflects the deep religious beliefs of the people laid to rest here. For archaeologists, these 77 skeletons are like perfectly preserved pages from a history book that remained hidden beneath the ground for 900 years. They not only help us better understand the lives, illnesses, and beliefs of Aarhus's earliest residents, but also reveal how Christianity transformed the identity of an entire city. And it is entirely possible that as new excavations continue beneath the modern streets of today, even greater secrets about the final years of the Viking Age will once again be brought to light. The Death Well. Filled with the skeletons of Roman Empire soldiers. Can you believe that an ordinary water well, hidden beneath the ground for nearly 1,700 years, could preserve evidence from one of the bloodiest periods of the Roman Empire? And even more chilling, what if the bottom of that well contained not water, but the remains of people who had once fought in a life-and-death conflict? If that sounds unbelievable, then join me on a journey to the city of Osijek in eastern Croatia. Before the construction of a new university project began there, archaeologists conducted a routine survey excavation, as required by standard procedure. At first, no one expected the site to yield anything extraordinary. However, upon closer inspection, experts unexpectedly discovered an ancient well dating back to the Roman Empire. What lay beneath it was even more disturbing. Instead of everyday objects or typical archaeological artifacts, researchers uncovered the remains of numerous individuals piled on top of one another. After careful excavation and analysis, they confirmed that a total of 7 skeletons lay at the bottom of the well. What makes the discovery particularly remarkable is that the remains were still relatively well preserved despite having spent nearly 2 millennia underground. Yet the way the bodies were found revealed a deeply tragic story. The skeletons were scattered in various positions, showing no signs of a formal burial ritual. Some bodies lay on their sides, others were stacked on top of one another. One individual was even found in a head-down position. All of these details suggest that the deceased were not buried in the traditional manner, but were instead thrown into the well after death. The ancient well appears to have become an improvised mass grave. According to bioarchaeologist Mario Novak of the Institute for Anthropological Research in Zagreb, the individuals were likely stripped of all valuable possessions before their bodies were discarded. Not a single sword, piece of armor, or item of jewelry was found alongside them. This suggests that someone deliberately removed everything of value before attempting to erase all traces of the dead. When researchers conducted a more detailed analysis, they determined that all 7 skeletons belonged to adult males. Among them were 4 relatively young men and 3 middle-aged individuals. But the most revealing evidence was found in the injuries preserved on their bones. Some of the skeletons displayed clear signs of trauma sustained before death. One individual suffered a severe blow to the forehead from a blunt object. Another had broken ribs. Several others bore wounds consistent with injuries caused by sharp weapons. These injuries indicate that the men had experienced violent combat or extremely brutal confrontations before meeting their deaths. The discoveries did not end there. Researchers also found evidence suggesting that several of the men may have suffered from respiratory infections shortly before they died. This offers a glimpse into the harsh living conditions faced by soldiers in the ancient world. To determine exactly when these events occurred, scientists used radiocarbon dating on 4 of the skeletons. The results showed that the men lived during the second half of the 3rd century AD. Interestingly, this dating perfectly matches the only artifact discovered at the bottom of the well, a Roman coin minted in the year 251. Using all of the evidence they had gathered, researchers began piecing together the historical puzzle. The well was located in an area known during Roman times as Mursa, a settlement that occupied an important strategic position near the empire's military frontier. This location led experts to a compelling theory. They believed the 7 men found at the bottom of the well were most likely soldiers who took part in the Battle of Mursa in AD 260. This was a bloody civil war fought between Emperor Gallienus and the general Ingenuus, who rebelled in an attempt to seize the Roman throne but ultimately failed. According to surviving historical records, Emperor Gallienus imposed extremely harsh punishments on the defeated rebels after his victory. For this reason, researchers believe the skeletons may have belonged to men who fought on Ingenuus's side. After their defeat, they may have been executed, stripped of all possessions, and finally thrown into the well as a way of completely erasing the traces of the losing faction. Nearly 1,700 years have passed, yet that ancient well continues to silently preserve the story of these unnamed soldiers. It is a story not written in ink or on parchment, but carved into bones, battlefield wounds, and centuries of silence beneath the earth. Heartbreaking, isn't it? 1,800-year-old Roman pot reveals a bloody gladiator battle forgotten by history. Have you ever wondered what an ancient artifact would tell us if it could speak? Would it tell the story of a powerful king, a lost treasure, or a terrifying battle that history has long forgotten? We can never know for sure, but sometimes the greatest secrets of the ancient world are not hidden within magnificent temples or famous historical records. Instead, they are preserved in small, seemingly ordinary objects that few people would ever notice. And the story we are about to explore begins with one such artifact, a clay pot that lay buried beneath the soil of England for nearly 1,800 years. At first glance, it appears to be nothing more than an ordinary ancient vessel. It is small in size, standing only about 3.5 inches tall, and was made from local clay, much like thousands of everyday objects that existed during the Roman period. But when archaeologists took a closer look, they realized they were standing before a truly extraordinary discovery. The raised images molded onto the surface of the pot were not simple decorative patterns. Instead, they resembled a scene frozen in time, capturing one of the most famous and brutal forms of entertainment in the Roman Empire. The story begins in the city of Colchester, located in northeastern Essex, England. This was once one of the most important Roman settlements in ancient Britain. During an archaeological excavation, specialists from Colchester Museum discovered the unusual artifact. At first, they viewed it simply as an ancient ceramic object worthy of study. However, the more closely they examined it, the more they realized that the vessel contained far more information than anyone had expected. Analysis revealed that the artifact dates to approximately AD 160 to 200. To facilitate further study, archaeologists named it the Colchester vase. Although relatively small, the scenes depicted on its surface open a window into the dramatic world of ancient Rome. Engraved on the vessel is the image of a gladiatorial contest. The figures are shown facing one another as if engaged in a life-or-death struggle before a crowd of spectators. This immediately excited experts, because direct evidence of gladiator games held in Roman Britain is not always easy to find. Nearly 2,000 years ago, on the very land that is now England, thousands of spectators may have gathered in arenas to watch bloody confrontations between warriors. It was an era when human lives were sometimes wagered for the entertainment of the crowd, and this small vessel appears to be preserving one such moment. But the detail that truly astonished archaeologists was something else entirely. The surface of the vase contains not only images, but also clearly inscribed names. Researchers were able to identify two names, Memnon and Valentinus. These were not random names. In the world of Roman gladiators, finding the names of individual fighters recorded on an artifact is extremely rare. This suggests that these men may have once been well-known figures, recognized and followed by spectators, much like modern sports stars. That fact alone is enough to make the Colchester vase an exceptionally important discovery for the study of Roman Britain. Researchers believe the artifact may have been created to commemorate a famous contest or to honor the gladiators who participated in it. Every detail on the vase is like a surviving fragment of an event that took place long ago, yet still has the power to captivate modern scholars. What is truly remarkable is that after nearly 1,800 years underground, the vessel has preserved important details that help us better understand everyday life during the Roman era. It demonstrates that gladiatorial games were not confined to the city of Rome or the empire's major centers. They had spread even to distant regions such as ancient Britain. Today, when we look at this small artifact, we see far more than an ancient ceramic vessel. We see echoes of cheers from an arena that no longer exists, images of warriors who fought for honor or survival, and stories that history seemed to have lost forever. It is just a small clay pot, yet it is powerful enough to open a doorway back to one of the most fascinating chapters of the ancient Roman world. That's pretty amazing, isn't it? What do you think? 6 1,000-year-old child skeletons found beside a mysterious tomb reveal a chilling sacrificial ritual of an ancient civilization. What could make a family accept that their children would enter death alongside someone who had already passed away? That is the question that has continued to trouble archaeologists ever since a haunting discovery was unearthed in the deserts of Peru, and I think it may leave you wondering as well. Beneath the ancient mud brick walls of a city that once thrived more than 1,000 years ago, experts uncovered evidence of a ritual that is almost impossible for us to imagine today. That evidence came in the form of 6 children buried around the tomb of a powerful individual, as though they had been chosen to accompany him on his journey into the afterlife. The story begins at Cajamarquilla, a massive archaeological complex located on the outskirts of Lima, the capital of Peru. From a distance, the site resembles a giant maze built entirely from mud. Yet thousands of years ago, Cajamarquilla was one of the largest and busiest urban centers in the region. The ancient city covered approximately 413 acres and was once home to between 10,000 and 20,000 residents. Administrative districts, residential neighborhoods, and public structures combined to create a remarkably advanced city in the arid landscapes of ancient South America. During a recent excavation, an archaeological team led by researcher Peter Van Dalen uncovered a particularly unusual burial site. What astonished them was not only what they found, but also the way the remains had been arranged. Near the tomb of a young man believed to have belonged to the noble class, archaeologists discovered the remains of 6 children. All of them had been wrapped in burial bundles according to ancient funerary traditions. Rather than being buried together in a single location, the children were placed at different points around the entrance to the tomb. This unusual arrangement led experts to believe that it was far from a random occurrence. According to the research team's hypothesis, the children may have been relatives or close family members of the young man buried within the tomb. They believe the children may have become sacrificial offerings in a special religious ceremony intended to accompany the deceased on his journey into the world of the dead. If this interpretation is correct, it would represent one of the clearest pieces of evidence for human sacrifice ever discovered in the region. Analysis indicates that the remains date back approximately 1,000 to 1,200 years. This means the children lived during a period when Cajamarquilla was flourishing and playing an important role in the trade networks of the Andes. But the remarkable discoveries did not end there. In addition to the 6 child skeletons, archaeologists also uncovered 7 adult skeletons near the tomb. Unlike the children, these individuals had not been wrapped in burial bundles. This suggests that they may have played a different role in the funerary ceremony or belonged to a different social class. Alongside the human remains, researchers also discovered numerous bones belonging to llamas, animals that held great value for ancient South American civilizations. The presence of these animal remains suggests that funeral rituals may have included animal sacrifices intended to serve the deceased in the afterlife. At the center of the entire burial complex was the mummy of a young man. The mummy was discovered in November of the previous year inside a tomb measuring approximately 10 feet long and about 4.6 feet deep. According to experts, the man was only about 20 years old when he died. Although he died at a young age, the prominent location of the tomb and the scale of the surrounding rituals suggest that he may have been an extremely important figure in his society. For that reason, researchers gave him an impressive title, the Lord of Cajamarquilla. Today, amid the ruins of this ancient mud brick city, the discovery is raising more questions than answers. Why was such an elaborate burial ceremony conducted for someone so young? Were the 6 children truly sacrificed to accompany him into the afterlife? And what beliefs led an ancient community to accept and carry out such a haunting ritual? It may take many more years of research before scientists can fully unravel the secrets hidden beneath the sands of Cajamarquilla. But even now, these newly discovered remains have provided us with a rare glimpse into the spiritual beliefs, power structures, and mysterious rituals that existed more than 1,000 years ago in ancient Peru. And perhaps the most fascinating part is that this story is still far from finished. 1,000-year-old temple containing 29 skeletons, the secret of 2 ancient civilizations that shocked the archaeological world. In the arid coastal region of Lambayeque, Peru, about 466 miles from the capital city of Lima, lies an archaeological site known as Huaca Santa Rosa de Pucallpa. Today, the site consists mainly of weathered ruins made of adobe and mud, worn down by the passage of time. Yet more than 1,000 years ago, this area was an important ceremonial center where religious activities, spiritual practices, and perhaps even sacred rituals of ancient civilizations once took place. Recently, during excavations at the site, a research team led by archaeologist Edgar Bracamonte made a discovery that captured the attention of the scientific community. Hidden deep within an ancient temple was a burial area containing the remains of 29 individuals. What makes the discovery particularly remarkable is that most of the skeletons remained relatively well preserved, despite having been buried for more than a millennium. Among them were the remains of 3 children, a detail that has drawn special interest from researchers seeking to better understand the lives and beliefs of the region's ancient inhabitants. When the analysis results were released, the historical picture became even more fascinating. Experts determined that the remains did not all belong to the same period. Of the 29 skeletons, 25 were associated with the Mochica civilization, also known as the Moche, a culture that flourished along Peru's northern coast from approximately AD 100 to 700. The remaining 4 skeletons belong to the Wari civilization, a powerful empire that controlled vast territories throughout the Andes from the 7th to the 13th century. This means that the same site was used by 2 different civilizations during separate periods of history. It is almost like opening an ancient book and unexpectedly discovering that several chapters were written by entirely different authors. What makes the discovery even more significant is that it is considered one of the first pieces of evidence showing Wari cultural influence at such a great distance from the civilization's traditionally recognized sphere of influence. This detail has prompted many researchers to ask an intriguing question. Could the reach of the Wari Empire have been far greater than historians previously believed? The ceremonial center of Huaca Santa Rosa de Pucallpa is itself an extraordinary structure. According to archaeologists, the temple features a D-shaped design, a relatively rare architectural style in the region. The structure was built between approximately AD 800 and 900, during a transitional period marked by the interaction of several major cultures in ancient Peru. In addition to the human remains, the excavation team uncovered numerous valuable artifacts. Ancient pottery fragments found within the burial area have provided important clues about the daily life and ceremonial practices of the people who once lived there. Researchers also discovered the bones of several animal species, including llamas and guinea pigs. Both animals played important roles in the lives of ancient Andean civilizations and frequently appeared in religious ceremonies and sacrificial rituals. The discovery at Huaca Santa Rosa de Pucallpa becomes even more meaningful when viewed alongside recent research into the Mochica civilization. Previously, in 2006, the archaeological world was stunned by the discovery of the famous mummy known as the Lady of Cao, a powerful woman who lived during the 5th century. That discovery completely transformed the long-held belief that only men could hold positions of power within Mochica society. Instead, it demonstrated that women could also become highly influential leaders with significant authority. Now, with the discovery of these 29 skeletons inside the ancient temple, researchers have gained yet another valuable piece of the puzzle needed to reconstruct the story of the civilizations that once flourished across Peru. Every skeleton, every pottery fragment, and every surviving trace is quietly telling the story of people who lived, believed, and built complex societies more than 1,000 years ago. And it is entirely possible that the greatest secrets concerning the relationship between the Mochica and the Wari civilizations are still waiting to be uncovered beneath layers of ancient soil that have never yet been touched. Perhaps the most fascinating discoveries are still hidden underground, waiting for the next excavation to bring them to light. The dragon coffin in an ancient Chinese tomb. In the middle of a peaceful field in Guangyuan village, in China's Guangxi Autonomous Region, no one could have imagined that beneath the seemingly ordinary soil lay an ancient secret buried for hundreds of years. And even more strangely, the first person to uncover that secret was not a famous archaeologist, but simply a farmer working in the field like any other day. But sometimes, history reveals itself in the most unexpected ways. With a single accidental strike of a hoe echoing across the field that day, a doorway was opened to a discovery that would leave Chinese archaeologists stunned. While preparing the soil in the fields of Guangyuan village, the farmer suddenly heard a sharp metallic sound coming from underground when his hoe struck something hard. At first, he assumed he had simply hit a large rock and planned to remove it so he could continue farming. But the more closely he looked, the more he realized something was not right. The object did not resemble a natural stone. Its surface was strangely smooth, and ancient symbols had been clearly carved into it. It was an incredibly hard and finely crafted slab of marble. At that moment, the farmer began to suspect that he might have accidentally uncovered an ancient tomb hidden deep beneath the earth. Realizing the importance of the discovery, he immediately reported it to the local cultural heritage authorities. Shortly after receiving the report, a team of archaeologists quickly arrived at the site to begin an emergency investigation and excavation. After many careful hours of surveying the area, the archaeologists confirmed that the site was an ancient tomb dating back to China's Yuan dynasty, buried underground for centuries. To prevent any artifacts inside from being damaged, the team immediately launched a large-scale rescue excavation. And the deeper they dug, the more overwhelmed they became by the incredible luxury of the burial site. Inside the tomb, numerous signs suggested that the person buried there had once held an extremely high position in society. But the most astonishing discovery was found in the main burial chamber. At the very center of the chamber stood a massive coffin crafted with extraordinary detail. It was sealed beneath 2 thick layers of compacted earth, almost like a protective barrier designed to guard whatever rested inside for centuries. As the layers of earth were slowly removed, the archaeologists were nearly speechless at the sight before them. Carved onto the lid of the coffin was the image of a golden dragon so lifelike that it appeared to move beneath the lights of the excavation site. Every curve of its body and every individual scale had been crafted with remarkable precision. Because of this, experts later named it the dragon coffin. one of the rarest and most mysterious discoveries ever found in Yuan dynasty tombs in China. But the mystery did not end there. After continuing to cut through the compacted layers surrounding the coffin, the archaeological team discovered another inner lid made from rare camphor wood. In ancient times, this type of wood was reserved only for the elite because of its exceptional resistance to decay. And when the wooden lid was finally opened, another smaller black coffin appeared inside, carefully placed at the center. This multi-layered structure further proved that the individual buried inside was certainly no ordinary person. However, what truly shocked the archaeological world was found at the bottom of the inner coffin. There, researchers discovered 7 small holes arranged in the pattern of the Big Dipper constellation. This unusual design carried strong influences from ancient Chinese Taoist culture. Because of this, archaeologists named the coffin the 7-star coffin. According to traditional Taoist beliefs, the 7-star coffin was considered an object with special spiritual power, capable of warding off evil spirits and protecting the soul of the deceased. The dragon imagery on the outside combined with the Big Dipper symbol hidden within created a burial structure filled with deep mystical meaning. It not only represented the power and status of the tomb's owner, but also reflected the ancient Chinese belief in the spiritual world after death. And believe it or not, even today, this discovery is still considered one of the most fascinating archaeological finds in China. The more experts study the tomb, the more they realize that it still seems to conceal many secrets that have yet to be fully understood. It is very possible that in the future, as archaeological technology continues to advance, the mysteries hidden deep within the 7-star coffin will finally be revealed, forcing the world to look at ancient history in an entirely different way. But until that day comes, all we can do is wait. 90 children's skeletons found in a 2,500-year-old tomb in Israel. Hidden deep beneath the dry soil of the ancient city of Azekah in Israel, archaeologists uncovered a secret that shocked the entire world. This secret had nothing to do with gold or silver, nor was it an ancient treasure like many people might imagine. Instead, it was the remains of dozens of infants and young children buried together inside an ancient water reservoir that had been forgotten for more than 2,500 years. And the most disturbing part is that no one knows exactly why this place became a mass grave used specifically for children. This chilling discovery was made during excavations carried out between 2012 and 2013 at the ancient city of Azekah, a famous archaeological site located in central Israel. The area had once been an important settlement for many ancient civilizations over thousands of years. While studying the site, archaeologists discovered an ancient water reservoir originally built during the time of the ancient Canaanites, with the earliest structure dating back to around 3,500 BC. At first, the reservoir was simply used to store water for everyday life. But over time, layer upon layer of different civilizations accumulated there across centuries. And while examining those archaeological layers, the research team uncovered something no one expected. Hidden inside the ancient reservoir were dozens of children's skeletons buried together in the same location. After careful analysis, archaeologists determined that between 68 and 89 individuals had been buried inside the reservoir during the early Persian period, around the 5th century BC, approximately 2,500 years ago. What especially caught the attention of researchers was the age of the children. Most of them were very young. Many were under 5 years old, and some skeletal remains showed that the children had died before reaching the age of 2. The tiny bones lying close together inside the cramped space created a scene that was both mysterious and deeply haunting. But perhaps the most remarkable detail was the way these children had been buried. Alongside the skeletal remains, archaeologists also discovered small burial items such as beads, metal jewelry, and ancient pottery objects. This suggested that the children had not simply been discarded randomly, but had instead been buried carefully according to a specific ritual or custom. According to the research team, the ancient reservoir appears to have been used as a cemetery specifically for infants and young children over several decades. And strangely, there was no evidence suggesting that this was the result of war, natural disaster, or disease. Experts also quickly ruled out the theory of child sacrifice, a possibility that had horrified many people when news of the discovery first emerged. The reason is that the skeletal remains showed no signs of violence or injury on the bones. Archaeologists also found no ritual objects or evidence connected to ancient sacrificial ceremonies. Instead, Researchers believe that most of these children died from natural causes. During that time period, infant mortality rates were extremely high. Many children were unable to survive their early years because medical care and sanitation were still very limited. Because of this, the ancient residents of Azeka may have developed a unique custom, burying young children together in one location instead of giving each child an individual burial. Researchers explain that during the early Persian period, the reservoir was mainly used to bury infants and children who had not yet been weaned. This reflects a social custom that was accepted as a normal part of life at that time. Hearing this story makes us realize that history is not only about wars or famous kings. Sometimes it is also about deeply tragic stories of ordinary human life in the ancient world. Behind those 90 tiny skeletons lies an entire era of hardship, a time when the lives of children were more fragile than ever. And even today, the discovery at the ancient city of Azeka in Israel is still considered one of the most haunting archaeological mysteries ever uncovered. 2,000-year-old eggs found in an ancient Chinese tomb still contain their yolks. You know, the world of archaeology is incredibly fascinating. Some discoveries amaze people because of gold, silver, and priceless treasures. But there are also discoveries so strange that simply hearing about them is enough to make people wonder whether they could possibly be real. And the story of a group of more than 2,000-year-old eggs, still containing intact yolks, discovered inside an ancient tomb in Jiangsu Province, China, is one of those mysteries. After all, you know how it is. Under normal conditions, an egg can spoil after just a few weeks. Yet these eggs remained buried underground for more than 2 millennia while still preserving their internal structure. Just hearing that sounds unbelievable, doesn't it? The story began when archaeologists started excavating an ancient tomb from the Western Zhou period in a small town in China's Jiangsu Province. At first, the excavation seemed fairly ordinary because the tomb did not appear especially remarkable. It had no massive architecture, nor were there any signs of a great treasure like those found in many other famous ancient tombs discovered in the past. In fact, when the excavation first began, many people assumed it was simply an ordinary ancient grave containing a few old pottery artifacts. But that is what makes archaeology so fascinating. Sometimes, the greatest secrets are hidden beneath the simplest appearances. During the excavation, the archaeological team began uncovering several finely crafted pottery items. However, those artifacts alone were not enough to greatly surprise researchers. That changed when an unexpected accident occurred. While moving some pottery pieces for closer examination, one archaeologist suddenly slipped and fell. The impact caused several ceramic objects to crash to the ground and shatter into countless fragments. At that moment, the entire team probably thought they had accidentally destroyed valuable artifacts. But what happened next left everyone completely speechless. Among the broken pieces, several small oval-shaped objects rolled out onto the ground. When the archaeologists leaned closer to inspect them, they were shocked to realize that these were not stones or decorative objects. They were ancient eggs. Even more astonishing, when a few of the eggs cracked open, the yolks inside were suddenly exposed right before everyone's eyes. The scene was so unbelievable that the entire archaeological team could hardly trust what they were seeing. An egg surviving for more than 2,000 years while still preserving its yolk seemed to defy all normal understanding. The atmosphere at the site immediately became chaotic and filled with excitement. Archaeologists began asking countless questions. How could these eggs possibly survive for so long? Did they still contain preserved biological material? And most importantly, what allowed them to remain so perfectly preserved underground for thousands of years? After the shocking discovery, the research team quickly carried out detailed scientific analysis and compared the findings with ancient texts from the Western Zhou period. The results confirmed that ancient Chinese people had indeed used eggs as food more than 2,000 years ago. This provided historians with clearer evidence about the daily life and culinary culture of ancient China. But the greatest mystery was hidden in the outer layer surrounding the eggs. Upon closer examination, experts discovered that all of the ancient eggs were coated in a fairly thick layer of yellow clay. Many researchers believe that this unique clay coating created an almost completely sealed environment, preventing air and bacteria from entering. As a result, the eggs were preserved for an extraordinarily long period of time. It is fair to say that this is one of the rare discoveries where archaeology and biological science intersect in an incredibly unusual way. Because these eggs are not simply historical artifacts, they may also contain valuable biological information from more than 2,000 years ago. After the excavation, all of the ancient eggs were carefully transported to a museum for long-term preservation and research. Scientists are now hoping to use modern technology to study the remaining material inside the eggs in an attempt to recreate ancient chicken breeds that once existed in China more than 2 millennia ago. If that effort is truly successful, it could become a major breakthrough for modern science. Not only could it help humanity better understand domesticated animals from ancient times, but it might also open an entirely new chapter in the study of civilizations that disappeared long ago in human history. Who would have thought that a single egg could reveal such an incredible story from the past? Fascinating, isn't it? 22. Female bodies found in an ancient Chinese tomb left archaeologists horrified. In Hubei province, China, the excavation of a massive ancient tomb shocked the entire world, not only because of the thousands of years-old treasures hidden inside, but also because of a horrifying secret involving the bodies of 22 young women discovered inside tightly sealed wooden coffins. What made the discovery even more disturbing was that marks left on the bones suggested these women may have suffered extremely painful final moments before death. This led archaeologists to believe that this was not simply an ordinary burial, but possibly a terrifying live human sacrifice ritual carried out by the ancient ruling class. The story began during a land development and construction project taking place in an area of Hubei province. At first, it was just a normal construction project like many others. But while digging, local workers unexpectedly discovered a strange crack in the ground. Beneath the opening appeared a tunnel-like passage lined with neatly arranged bricks, as if they had been carefully placed by human hands thousands of years ago. Sensing that the site might be an ancient relic, the workers immediately stopped all construction activities and reported the discovery to local authorities. Shortly after receiving the report, archaeologists quickly arrived at the site to begin an investigation and survey. After a careful inspection, experts confirmed that the location was in fact an enormous ancient tomb complex. To prevent damage to the site, an emergency rescue excavation was launched immediately. And the deeper the team dug underground, the more astonishing the discoveries became, even to the most experienced archaeologists. According to the experts, this was not an ordinary tomb, but the burial site of a king or a high-ranking noble from China's Warring States period. A historical era famous for brutal wars and the immense power of the ruling elite. The main burial chamber covered an area of approximately 5,400 square feet and contained tens of thousands of valuable artifacts preserved in nearly perfect condition. From finely crafted jade ornaments and elaborate lacquerware to beautifully designed bronze objects, everything suggested that the owner of the tomb once held an extraordinarily powerful and noble status. Each artifact seemed like a piece of history, reflecting the master craftsmanship of ancient Chinese civilization. But among all of those treasures, the discovery that truly horrified archaeologists was found in another section of the tomb. There, experts uncovered a total of 23 wooden coffins that had remained remarkably well preserved despite being buried underground for thousands of years. Among them, the largest and most valuable coffin was made from golden nanmu wood, an extremely rare material in ancient Chinese history that was usually reserved only for emperors and the highest-ranking nobility. This made archaeologists even more curious about the identity of the person buried inside the central coffin. But when they continued opening the remaining coffins, the atmosphere at the excavation site became almost unbearably heavy. Inside the other 22 coffins were the bodies of young women. After conducting detailed analysis of the skeletons, experts determined that the women were between approximately 17 and 22 years old. However, the strangest and most terrifying detail was the position of the bones. Their skeletons were twisted and unnaturally deformed, as if they had struggled violently before dying. In addition, archaeologists noticed several signs suggesting that the women may have been tied up before being placed inside the coffins. Based on the bone structure and body positions, researchers quickly proposed a horrifying theory. The women may have been buried alive. Drawing from historical records and burial customs of the Warring States period, researchers believe this may have been a form of live human sacrifice once practiced among the ancient Chinese nobility. At that time, burying living people alongside the owner of a tomb was believed to allow them to continue serving the deceased in the afterlife. The tightly sealed wooden coffins would have prevented the victims from escaping. Over time, their desperate struggles may have caused their bones to become deformed in the way archaeologists discovered today. Even now, this ancient tomb is still considered one of the most haunting archaeological discoveries of recent years. Not only because of its enormous scale or the vast number of treasures it contained, but also because it exposed a terrifying dark side of ancient elite burial rituals, a world in which human lives were sometimes treated merely as sacrifices in service of power and belief in the afterlife. Iron Age treasure in England reveals secrets of the most powerful Celtic queen in history. Hidden beneath the lonely fields of Yorkshire in northern England lies a mysterious burial ritual from more than 2,000 years ago, something no one could have imagined, and perhaps neither could you. A ritual in which hundreds of valuable treasures were deliberately smashed and burned before being buried forever beneath the earth. And what shocked archaeologists the most is that this treasure may be connected to a powerful Celtic queen who once made the Roman Empire uneasy. The story began in 2021 when an amateur metal detectorist was surveying an area near the village of Melsonby in Yorkshire, northern England. At first, he only hoped to find a few small ancient metal objects, just as he had many times before. But suddenly, his metal detector began giving off strong, continuous signals beneath the ground. After checking the area, the man realized there could be something very large buried below. Sensing that this discovery was unusual, he immediately contacted local archaeologists. And that decision led to one of the most astonishing excavations England has seen in recent years. After arriving at the site and conducting surveys, experts quickly determined that this was not a single treasure hoard, but two separate burial areas containing an enormous number of artifacts. The excavation eventually uncovered more than 950 ancient objects dating back to the Iron Age, including massive iron wheels once attached to ancient chariots or wagons, large cauldrons, beautifully decorated wine-mixing bowls, and numerous ceremonial spearheads. All of them carried the unmistakable marks of the ancient Celtic aristocracy. According to experts, this is one of the largest Iron Age treasure discoveries ever found in England. But what truly stunned archaeologists was not only the scale of the treasure, but also the condition of the artifacts. Most of them showed severe burn damage. Some items had been exposed to temperatures so high that the bronze and silver alloys on their surfaces had begun to melt. A study published on March 17th in the journal Antiquity stated that researchers believe the entire treasure may once have been part of the funeral ceremony of a powerful Celtic ruler or queen before being intentionally destroyed and buried underground as part of a special sacrificial ritual. Co-author of the study, archaeologist Tom Moore from Durham University, also stated that the enormous scale of the treasure and the large number of valuable artifacts clearly show that this was not the funeral of an ordinary person. The ritual was most likely carried out by the Brigantes, a powerful Celtic tribe that once ruled much of northern England during the Iron Age. At the time, the Brigantes controlled the nearby area of Stanwick, located only a few hundred yards from where the treasure was discovered. In ancient times, Stanwick was a massive fortified settlement that the Romans referred to as an oppidum, a heavily defended Celtic stronghold, usually built on high ground or in strategically defensive locations. What makes the discovery even more fascinating is that many of the artifacts show evidence of trade with continental Europe. Some items were decorated with coral originating from the Mediterranean, suggesting that the Brigantes aristocracy was far from isolated and maintained extensive connections with other European civilizations of the time. Through radiocarbon dating, researchers determined that the artifacts date back to around the 1st century BC, a period when ancient Britain had not yet been fully conquered by Rome. The mystery deepened when archaeologists failed to find any graves or human remains nearby, despite uncovering such a massive treasure. This has led many experts to believe that the body of the person honored in the ceremony may have been buried elsewhere, while the Melsonby site served only as the location for cremation rituals and the sacrificial burning of burial goods. According to archaeologist Tom Moore, burning valuable items such as chariots, weapons, and luxury goods may have been a way for the Celtic elite to display their power and wealth even after death. At the time, cremation rituals were becoming increasingly common among the upper classes throughout many parts of ancient Britain. And the name attracting the most attention is Queen Cartimandua, the powerful woman who, according to Roman historians, ruled the Brigantes tribe after 69 AD. Although there is still no direct evidence proving that the treasure belonged to her, many experts believe the scale of the Melsonby discovery would certainly be worthy of a royal funeral for an ancient Celtic ruler. So what do you think? Who do you believe this treasure belonged to? Do you agree with the archaeologists' theories? Leave your thoughts in the comments below so everyone can join the discussion. 21 gold medals found in an ancient Han Dynasty tomb were left behind by grave robbers, and the truth was terrifying. In Wangcheng County, Hunan Province, China, there is an ancient Western Han Dynasty tomb that had been broken into by grave robbers long ago. They ransacked every corner of the tomb, stole numerous valuable artifacts, and vanished without a trace. Yet strangely, in the middle of that chaotic burial chamber, archaeologists discovered 21 pure gold medals still lying beneath the soil as if no one had ever touched them. Think about it for a moment. To grave robbers, gold is always the most valuable thing of all. So why would they leave behind dozens of pounds of gold right in front of their eyes? The answer shocked even archaeologists themselves. The story began after an accident at a construction site in Wangcheng County. While digging the foundation for a large building, a worker unexpectedly struck a massive blue stone slab buried deep underground. At first, everyone assumed it was just an ordinary rock, but as the dirt was brushed away, rows of ancient carved inscriptions gradually appeared on its surface, remarkably clear despite the passage of time. Sensing that something was unusual, the worker immediately reported the discovery to the local cultural heritage authorities. Soon after receiving the report, archaeologists quickly arrived at the site to investigate. Before long, they confirmed that a large ancient tomb truly existed beneath the ground. However, what worried the excavation team was that the burial mound above the tomb had already collapsed and showed severe signs of disturbance. Those traces strongly suggested that grave robbers had looted the site long before archaeologists ever arrived. When the experts entered the burial chamber, they were immediately met with a scene of chaos. Objects were scattered everywhere, and many areas had clearly been dug up and destroyed. Even a quick glance was enough to tell that the tomb had been thoroughly searched. Based on the tomb's architectural structure and the remaining artifacts, archaeologists determined that it dated back more than 2,000 years to the Han Dynasty. Although many valuable treasures had already disappeared, the team still decided to fully excavate the site in hopes of uncovering additional historical clues. And incredibly, while sifting through the soil beneath the tomb floor, they suddenly discovered glittering golden objects buried in the dirt. When the items were brought into the light, everyone was stunned. They were 21 pure gold medals hidden deep underground. Each medal measured about 2.4 inches in diameter, weighed nearly 1 pound, and featured an exquisitely engraved V-shaped pattern on its surface. After analyzing the metal composition, experts confirmed that the medals contained more than 99% gold. In other words, they were almost pure gold, exactly the kind of treasure no grave robber should have been able to ignore. And yet, all 21 medals remained untouched. At first, even the archaeologists could not understand what had happened. Why would the robbers steal nearly all of the burial objects but leave behind the most valuable items of all? But after studying the inscriptions and documents found inside the tomb more carefully, the secret was finally revealed. Experts determined that the tomb belonged to a prince of the Western Han Dynasty, and the 21 gold medals were likely not ordinary gold at all, but special coins or ceremonial medals minted exclusively for the imperial family. That detail changed everything. During the Han Dynasty in China, laws regarding imperial property were terrifyingly strict. Anyone caught possessing or selling objects belonging to the royal court could face severe punishment, and in some cases, even their entire family could be implicated. In other words, those gold medals were like deadly marks of the imperial household itself. The moment grave robbers tried to take them outside the tomb, they would practically be turning themselves into targets of the imperial government. And perhaps that is exactly why, despite their greed, the robbers ultimately chose to leave all 21 gold medals buried underground before hastily fleeing the site. When you hear a story like this, you begin to realize that sometimes the thing people fear most is not ghosts or ancient curses, but the absolute power of a dynasty that once ruled an entire empire. The giant bronze hand found in an ancient Swiss tomb, and the mystery that has divided archaeologists for years. In the world of archaeology, some artifacts are identified almost immediately after being unearthed. Their origins and purposes become clear right away. But there are also discoveries that grow more mysterious the more they are studied, leaving even leading experts arguing for years without finding a final answer. And the giant bronze hand discovered inside an ancient tomb in Switzerland is exactly that kind of mystery. What makes this artifact so strange is that it looks nothing like any ancient object ever found before. It is not clearly a weapon, nor does it resemble jewelry or a sculpture. But the most disturbing part came when archaeologists assembled the bronze fragments together and realized that the skeleton inside the tomb was missing exactly one arm. Just think about that for a moment. Could humans thousands of years ago have already known how to create a metal prosthetic hand? The story began during an archaeological excavation in Switzerland, when experts were investigating an ancient burial site deep underground. At first, the excavation seemed fairly ordinary. Ancient bone fragments, a few stone artifacts, and traces of metal appeared just like at many other archaeological sites across Europe. But then a strange discovery forced the entire team to stop. Lying beside the skeleton were 4 large bronze fingers. They had been crafted with extraordinary precision, and their surfaces showed evidence of highly advanced ancient metal casting techniques. Even at first glance, it was obvious that these were not ordinary objects. At the time, archaeologists believed they might be parts of an ancient weapon or combat tool. After all, throughout ancient European history, metal was commonly used to make spears, swords, and military equipment. However, as the excavation continued and researchers examined the skeleton more closely, an unusual detail immediately stood out. The skeleton was preserved almost completely, except for the left arm. That discovery instantly changed every previous theory. Experts began considering a bold possibility. Could these bronze fingers once have belonged to a prosthetic limb for the person buried inside the tomb? If true, this could be one of the oldest prosthetic arms ever discovered in Europe. Many researchers believe the man buried in the tomb may have been a warrior or a person of special status. He may have lost his left arm in battle or in an accident, and later used this bronze device to continue living and possibly even fighting. Just hearing that sounds almost unbelievable, doesn't it? Because in ancient times, creating a functional metal arm would have seemed far beyond what most people thought possible. But the mystery did not end there. While continuing to examine the inside of the tomb, experts noticed a strange stone lying near the skeleton. Unlike ordinary rocks, this stone had an unusually smooth surface and a rounded shape, with a raised section in the center that looked almost like a small pillar. Out of curiosity, the archaeological team decided to place the bronze hand onto the raised section. And then the most puzzling thing happened. The bronze hand fit perfectly onto the stone pillar. It matched so precisely that it looked as though the two objects had been made specifically for each other. At that moment, the atmosphere at the excavation site reportedly fell completely silent. If this truly was a prosthetic arm for the person buried in the tomb, then why was it designed to attach to a stone structure? But if it was an object used in some kind of ritual ceremony, then why was the skeleton missing exactly its left arm? The more archaeologists studied the discovery, the more confusing everything became. Some experts believe the bronze hand may have been a symbol of power or an object used in ancient religious rituals. Meanwhile, others still argue that it really was a prosthetic limb, and that the stone simply functioned as a support base to hold it in place. But even today, no definitive evidence has been found to prove which theory is correct. There are no historical records describing a similar object, and no second bronze hand has ever been discovered in any other ancient tomb across Europe. That has turned the mysterious artifact unearthed in Switzerland into one of the greatest unsolved puzzles in modern archaeology. However, scientists believe that in the future, as technologies such as DNA analysis, ancient metal studies, and 3D scanning continue to advance, the secret of the giant bronze hand may finally be revealed. But until then, it remains an artifact that has fascinated all of Europe for many years. 2,000-year-old wooden board found in a Han Dynasty tomb in China, and the astronomical calculation that shocked the world. If a modern scientist accurately calculates the cycle of Venus using computers and telescopes, that is nothing particularly surprising. But if someone managed to do the same thing more than 2,000 years ago, in an era without telescopes or modern measuring technology, then the story becomes something entirely different, doesn't it? And that is exactly what stunned archaeologists from both Japan and China when they uncovered an ancient wooden board inside a Han Dynasty tomb at Mozuizi in Gansu Province, China. At first, no one imagined that the worn-out object could have anything to do with astronomy. Compared to the many valuable artifacts found in the tomb, it looked completely ordinary. But then, just a few lines of writing discovered on ancient bamboo slips changed the entire excavation forever. Because what was recorded there suggested that ancient Chinese astronomers may have calculated the synodic cycle of Venus with near-perfect accuracy more than 2 millennia ago. Just think about that for a moment. In a time when people could observe the sky only with the naked eye, how could they possibly calculate the movement of a planet with an error of less than a single day? The story began as archaeological cooperation between China and Japan continued to grow stronger. At the time, Japanese researchers were especially interested in ancient Chinese sites and repeatedly requested permission to participate in deeper studies. After many discussions, China agreed to allow the Akita Prefectural Center for Buried Cultural Properties to work together with the Gansu Provincial Institute of Cultural Relics and Archaeology in excavating the Han Dynasty tomb complex at Mozuizi. A joint Chinese-Japanese archaeological team was quickly formed and began excavating the ancient burial site deep beneath the ground in Gansu Province, China. During their investigation of Han Tomb No. 2 at Mozuizi, experts continuously uncovered numerous valuable artifacts. Among the most remarkable was an extremely detailed mural depicting the sun, moon, clouds, birds, animals, and humans living in harmony with nature. The artwork led many archaeologists to believe that people of the Han Dynasty possessed a profound understanding of the universe and the relationship between humanity and nature. But among all the treasures discovered, the object that attracted the most attention was this weathered wooden board that had survived for roughly 2,000 years. Although damaged by time, the artifact was eventually restored almost completely. At first, no one understood what it was used for. It did not resemble a weapon, a decorative object, or a typical ritual item. Even experienced archaeologists from both China and Japan debated its purpose for a long time without reaching a conclusion. That changed when the Han Dynasty bamboo slips were finally deciphered. The writings on the slips mainly focused on ancient classics, divination, and especially astronomy. That detail caused researchers to begin viewing the wooden board from an entirely different perspective. They started to suspect that it might have been an ancient astronomical instrument lost to history long ago. After repeated analyses and comparisons of the data, that theory gradually became more convincing. And then came the discovery that astonished the scientific world. According to the information recorded on the bamboo slips, Han Dynasty scholars had calculated the synodic cycle of Venus to be approximately 584.4 days. Meanwhile, according to modern astronomy, the actual cycle of Venus is about 583.92 days. That means the error was less than half a day. Even with modern technology, accurately tracking the movement of planets is far from simple. Yet more than 2,000 years ago, ancient people may have accomplished this using only wooden instruments and naked-eye observations. The discovery left many Japanese archaeologists extremely excited. Some experts even declared that the findings at Mozuizi could rewrite part of the history of world astronomy. Until now, very few people believed that ancient Eastern astronomy could have achieved such an extraordinary level of precision thousands of years ago. In fact, many researchers now believe that Han Dynasty astronomers may have possessed a far more sophisticated sky observation system than historical records have ever suggested. And that mysterious wooden board may very well have been part of an advanced astronomical technology that was lost over time. Today, the wooden board discovered at Mozuizi is still being studied. And perhaps in the future, the secrets hidden within that 2,000-year-old artifact will shock the world even more and completely change what we know about the scientific abilities of ancient civilizations. After all, no one can truly predict what else may still be hidden in the ancient world, because there are still far too many mysteries that humanity has yet to fully unravel. The terrifying images inside the 4,000-year-old tomb of an Egyptian priestess. Hidden deep beneath the scorching sands of the ancient cemetery of Asyut, a burial chamber sealed for nearly 4 millennia suddenly appeared before the eyes of archaeologists. And what shocked the world was not only the luxury of this tomb, but also the identity of the woman buried inside. A powerful priestess who once served one of the most sacred goddesses of ancient Egypt. After nearly 4,000 years buried beneath the earth, the paintings on the walls remained astonishingly vivid. The precious wooden coffin still rested in its original position, and the ancient inscriptions continued to tell the story of the soul's journey into the afterlife, as if everything had happened only yesterday. This mysterious discovery was made by experts from Egypt's Ministry of Antiquities during excavations at the Asyut necropolis in central Egypt. The excavation took place in a famous ancient cemetery that once served as the final resting place for nobles and powerful officials throughout ancient Egyptian history. While expanding the research area at the site, archaeologists unexpectedly discovered a burial chamber sealed shut with massive stone walls. What made the discovery especially remarkable was that the chamber had remained almost completely sealed for thousands of years. After hours spent breaking through the stone barrier blocking the entrance, the archaeological team finally managed to enter the chamber. And the moment their lights illuminated the ancient room, everyone stood frozen in shock at the incredible sight before them. It was an extraordinarily magnificent burial chamber dating back to around 1880 BC, nearly 4,000 years ago. According to the hieroglyphic inscriptions carved onto the tomb, the owner was Idi, an ancient Egyptian priestess and the daughter of Hapi I, the powerful governor who ruled the Asyut region at the time. Not only was Idi born into nobility, but she also held an extremely important religious role. She served as a priestess of Hathor, the famous goddess representing love, music, beauty, and protection in ancient Egyptian belief. That explains why her resting place was constructed with such extraordinary care and luxury. Archaeologists discovered that the burial chamber had been designed with incredible sophistication. The surrounding stone walls were decorated with relief carvings and ancient paintings whose colors remained remarkably clear despite spending thousands of years underground. Many of the images depicted religious ceremonies, ritual offerings, and the soul's journey after death, all portrayed in extraordinary detail across the tomb walls. For the ancient Egyptians, death was not considered an ending, but merely a transition into the next world. That is why tombs were often built as eternal homes for the deceased. But the most astonishing discovery stood at the center of the chamber itself. There rested the coffin of the priestess Idi. Even though grave robbers had broken into the chamber during ancient times, most of the burial objects inside remained surprisingly intact. The coffin had been crafted from rare imported wood, a material considered extremely expensive in ancient Egypt. Its surface was decorated with intricate patterns and hieroglyphic texts describing in detail the soul's journey through the underworld toward eternal rebirth. Many experts believe that Idi's tomb not only reflects the immense power of Egypt's ancient nobility, but also demonstrates how deeply beliefs about the afterlife were woven into everyday Egyptian life. What makes the discovery even more extraordinary is that despite having been looted in antiquity, most of the chamber's structure and many valuable artifacts survived in remarkably good condition. This is considered extremely rare for ancient Egyptian tombs, as most have been heavily damaged or robbed over thousands of years of history. Today, experts continue studying the inscriptions and paintings inside the burial chamber, hoping to learn more about the life of the priestess Idi and the role of women in the religion of ancient Egypt. 4,000-year-old mummy, hidden in an Egyptian cliff, stunned archaeologists. Among the barren mountain ranges along the Nile River in southern Egypt, once considered sacred land by the ancient pharaohs, a discovery was made that left even seasoned archaeologists breaking into a cold sweat when they saw it with their own eyes. It was not gold or treasure, nor a magnificent tomb like the ones described in legends, but a strange nearly 4,000-year-old mummy hidden inside a coffin suspended deep within a cliffside in the city of Aswan. The story began in 2019 during excavations at an ancient burial site in Aswan, the historic Egyptian city located along the Nile River. A team of archaeologists led by Martina Bartanova unexpectedly discovered a coffin that had never been opened before. What shocked the team was not only how perfectly preserved the coffin was, but also its location. It had been hidden deep inside a cliff, almost completely isolated from the outside world, as if the ancient Egyptians had intentionally concealed it to protect it from tomb robbers for thousands of years. At the time, Dr. Martina and a team of Spanish researchers were investigating the reign of Hatshepsut, the first woman to rule ancient Egypt, from 1479 to 1458 BC. None of them imagined that this expedition would lead to a mystery so exciting for experts who study ancient human remains. The excavation process was later filmed and broadcast by the British television program Secrets of Egypt's Valley of the Kings. But the most terrifying part was not what appeared on camera. It was the moment the team approached the burial site. At the time, a massive Sahara sandstorm was sweeping in from southern Egypt. The wind howled across the desert as thick clouds of sand swallowed the sky. The program's narrator even described how the short journey of only about 220 yards to reach the burial site became a real battle. The team had to crouch low and struggle step by step through the violent sandstorm just to reach the ancient tomb carved into the cliffside. Then came the most frightening moment of all. After hours of struggling, the researchers finally managed to remove the heavy clay coffin lid. As Dr. Martina slowly opened the coffin, she immediately shuddered. Inside was not the image of a carefully wrapped mummy like those commonly seen in movies about ancient Egypt. Instead, lying before them was a shriveled, distorted body covered in a strange black substance. The entire team fell silent for several seconds. Dr. Martina later recalled that the coffin looked absolutely terrifying. According to her, it did not truly resemble a traditional mummy because the body had not been carefully wrapped in bandages. It looked more as though the corpse had been hastily placed into the coffin rather than prepared through a complete ancient Egyptian burial ritual. Following the discovery, several experts were brought to the site to analyze the mysterious remains. Among them was Miguel Cecilio Botella Lopez, a renowned specialist in human skeletal research. As the black material was gradually removed, the team anxiously waited to uncover the true identity of the person who had rested inside the coffin for nearly 4 millennia. The results shocked everyone. Dr. Botella confirmed that the skeleton belonged to a woman, but the most astonishing detail was her age at the time of death, over 70 years old. Today, that might not sound unusual, but in ancient Egypt, it was almost unimaginable. Back then, average life expectancy was extremely low. Children often died from disease and infections. Those who survived childhood typically lived only to around 25 years old. Women faced especially high risks during childbirth, making long life even rarer. That is why the discovery of a woman who lived beyond the age of 70 in ancient Egypt left archaeologists utterly stunned. Dr. Martina admitted she was genuinely amazed that this woman had lived such a long life nearly 4,000 years ago. The discovery also raised a series of mysterious questions. Who was this woman? Why was she buried separately inside a cliff? Why was her body not mummified using traditional methods? And most importantly, how was she able to live so long during an era when even powerful pharaohs rarely reached such an age? Even Tutankhamun, one of the most famous rulers of ancient Egypt, is believed to have died at only around 18 years old under mysterious circumstances. To this day, all of those questions remain unanswered. The more archaeologists study this coffin, the more it feels like a missing piece of ancient Egyptian history. A secret buried in darkness for thousands of years until a Sahara sandstorm accidentally led modern humans directly to it. Pretty terrifying, isn't it? The mysterious skull boxes revealed 2 human species that once lived alongside the ancestors of modern humans. Hundreds of thousands of years ago, when modern humans, Homo sapiens, were still struggling to survive across the frozen wilderness of prehistoric Earth, we were not alone. Besides the famous Neanderthals who once dominated ancient Europe, scientists now believe that at least 2 other mysterious human species once existed. Ancient human relatives who may have hunted together, shared tools, passed knowledge to one another, and even had children with the ancestors of modern humans. The most chilling part is that for hundreds of thousands of years, they almost completely vanished from history, as if they had never existed at all, until ancient skulls were pulled from deep beneath the earth. The first story begins in the city of Harbin, Heilongjiang province in northeastern China. In 1933, while Chinese laborers were building a bridge over the Songhua River, they unexpectedly discovered a gigantic human skull buried deep beneath layers of ancient soil. At that time, however, the region was occupied by the Japanese military. Fearing that the valuable artifact would fall into Japanese hands, the workers secretly hid the skull inside an abandoned well, and there the secret remained buried for decades. It was not until 2018, shortly before his death, that one of the workers finally revealed the true location of the mysterious skull in his final testimony. When Chinese scientists finally brought it to light, the archaeological world was left stunned. It was one of the most complete ancient human skulls ever discovered anywhere on Earth. The research team, led by Professor Cheng Ji from Hebei Geo University, conducted a detailed analysis. The results showed that the skull was approximately 146,000 years old, but what shocked scientists most was its appearance. The face of this ancient being looked surprisingly similar to modern Homo sapiens, especially around the eye sockets and facial structure. However, it had almost no chin, while the skull itself was extremely large and displayed a mixture of traits from both modern humans and ancient Neanderthals. Researchers named this newly identified human species Homo longi, more famously known as Dragon Man. The name came not only from Heilongjiang province, whose name translates roughly to Black Dragon River, but also from the enormous size of the skull itself. It is believed to be the largest human skull ever discovered within the entire Homo genus. What makes Homo longi even more fascinating is that it may have been more closely related to Homo sapiens than Neanderthals were. Scientists believe that interbreeding may have occurred between them. In other words, our ancestors may once have had children with an entirely different human species. But the mystery does not end there. Thousands of miles away from China, near the Nesher Ramla site close to the city of Ramla in central Israel, another discovery would once again force scientists to rewrite the history of human evolution. Beginning in 2010, archaeologists started uncovering strange fossil fragments at the site. At first, they appeared to be only scattered pieces of bone buried deep beneath ancient layers of rock and soil. But after years of research and the reconstruction of the skull using 3D technology, paleoanthropologists realized they were facing an entirely different type of human. Professor Israel Hershkovitz from Tel Aviv University stated that these fossil fragments dated back between 120,000 and 140,000 years. This mysterious species possessed a very rugged face, large teeth, and almost no chin. Their skull shared several similarities with Neanderthals, yet appeared far more primitive. As scientists continued comparing the remains, they discovered connections between these bones and several fossil discoveries that had puzzled researchers for years. These included 160,000-year-old remains from Tabun Cave, 250,000-year-old bones from Zutia Cave, and even 400,000-year-old specimens from Kizim Cave, all located within present-day Israel. This proved that they were not dealing with a single individual, but with an entire population of ancient humans that had lived throughout the Middle East for hundreds of thousands of years. They knew how to craft sharp stone tools and create primitive weapons that may have been the predecessors of spears and arrows. More importantly, scientists believe they shared these techniques with both Neanderthals and Homo sapiens living nearby. This suggests that hundreds of thousands of years ago, multiple human species may have existed side by side on the same land, hunting together, surviving together, and perhaps even forming families together. And evidence of that ancient connection may still exist within our bodies today. Studies suggest that during the period when Homo sapiens settled in the region of present-day Israel around 200,000 years ago, up until the mysterious Nesher Ramla humans became extinct, extensive interbreeding likely occurred. Some fossils that once confused scientists because they appeared partly Homo sapiens and partly something else are now believed to be hybrid descendants of our ancestors and this mysterious human species. The deeper scientists dig into the past, the more they realize that human evolution was far more complicated than we once imagined. The Homo genus once included countless different human species living across Earth, but over time, most of them disappeared from history. And in the end, only one remained. Homo sapiens, us. Isn't the story of human evolution fascinating? It continues to take us from one astonishing discovery to the next. The Royal Palace. Buried beneath Jerusalem for 3,000 years, the secrets of the kings of Judah slowly revealed as hidden deep beneath the ancient layers of stone and soil in the city of Jerusalem, a place that has witnessed bloody wars, legendary sieges, and the collapse of mighty empires. Archaeologists have recently uncovered the remains of a structure that has astonished the entire scientific community. It was not an ordinary temple, nor an ancient residential district, but the rare remains of a magnificent royal estate that once stood nearly 3,000 years ago. A grand royal palace once towered proudly with beautifully carved stone columns, luxurious door frames, and elegant balconies overlooking ancient Jerusalem. It is believed to have belonged to the most powerful elite of the ancient kingdom of Judah, a place where every inch of land carried thousands of years of history. But over time, everything disappeared completely from the world. Only silent stone fragments remained buried beneath the earth for millennia. This shocking discovery was announced by archaeologists following excavations in Jerusalem, the ancient city located in modern-day Israel in the Middle East. What they uncovered has revealed another piece of the mystery surrounding the First Temple period, an era lasting from around 1000 BC to 586 BC, considered one of the most important periods in the history of ancient Jerusalem. What especially excited researchers was the discovery of numerous finely carved artifacts made from soft limestone. These objects displayed the Proto-Aeolian architectural style, a design strongly associated with power and prestige during the reign of the kings of Judah. According to archaeologists, Proto-Aeolian architecture was not something found in ordinary buildings. It was typically used only in palaces, temples, or structures built for the highest ruling classes. In other words, this site may very well have been an actual royal palace. Among the discoveries, the most remarkable were the stone capitals that had remained almost perfectly preserved despite lying underground for thousands of years. The carved details on the stone are still astonishingly sharp, revealing the extraordinary craftsmanship of the ancient artisans who created them. Not only that, archaeologists also uncovered stone window frames and luxurious balustrades, features that in ancient times could only be afforded by royalty or the wealthy elite. Just imagine it. Nearly 3,000 years ago, in the dry lands of ancient Jerusalem, there existed a lavish structure so magnificent that it featured beautifully carved stone balconies overlooking the city itself. Doesn't that show just how wealthy and powerful the owner of this place must have been? Unfortunately, most of the structure no longer survives. According to researchers, the palace was most likely destroyed during the Babylonian destruction of Jerusalem in 586 BC, one of the most catastrophic events in the history of ancient Judah. When the Babylonian forces invaded Jerusalem, they burned the city, destroyed many important structures, and plunged an entire civilization into a dark age. This royal palace was likely flattened during that disaster, leaving behind only scattered architectural fragments buried deep beneath layers of earth and stone for thousands of years. Until today. Another unfortunate reality is that archaeologists still cannot determine exactly who once lived inside this ancient estate. Some theories suggest it may have been the residence of a king from the ancient kingdom of Judah. Others believe it could have belonged to a powerful noble family that once controlled the Jerusalem region. But regardless of who the true owner was, the scale and sophistication of the structure are enough to amaze researchers. Scientists believe the bold architecture of this palace provides clear evidence that Jerusalem experienced a strong recovery after the devastating Assyrian siege in 701 BC. At that time, the city had stood on the brink of collapse, but after surviving the war, Jerusalem appears to have entered a new period of growth. People no longer lived confined behind defensive walls. Instead, they began expanding the city and constructing massive new buildings outside the protected areas. And this royal palace may have been a symbol of that rebirth, a surviving trace from an era when Jerusalem rose once again from the flames of war. A world of kings, ancient battles, and royal palaces that once stood proudly within human history before being buried forever by time. 8,000-year-old artifact found inside a giant alligator. Now, what if I told you that inside the stomach of an alligator nearly 13 feet long and weighing around 750 pounds, researchers discovered ancient Native American artifacts dating back thousands of years before Christ? Would you believe it? If you've never imagined something like that, or you simply don't believe what I just said, then come with me to Eagle Lake in the state of Mississippi, because this is where an American licensed alligator hunter named John Hamilton made an astonishing discovery. It all began when John Hamilton joined a special hunting trip in the Eagle Lake area. You see, for many people living in the southern United States, alligator hunting is nothing unusual. In several states, citizens aged 16 and older can legally apply for permits to own and hunt alligators under state regulations, and John Hamilton was one of those licensed hunters. But even for a man with years of experience, this was a trip he would probably never forget for the rest of his life. After hours of trekking through murky waters and dense marsh reeds, Hamilton finally came face to face with a massive alligator measuring nearly 13 feet long and weighing about 750 pounds. Its size alone was enough to send chills down anyone's spine. A gigantic creature with armor-like skin, razor-sharp teeth, and an incredibly powerful bite lurking beneath the dark waters of the Mississippi swamp. With just a single snap of its jaws, it could crush almost anything. But in the end, Hamilton successfully brought it down. After the hunt, John Hamilton took the alligator to a processing company called Red Antler Processing. Normally, hunters only keep the meat and skin, but Hamilton made a rather unusual request. He wanted the alligator's stomach to be cut open as well. The reason was simple. Earlier, Hamilton had heard a strange story about a dog tag being discovered inside the stomach of another alligator in South Carolina. That story made him curious about whether the swamp monster he had captured might also have swallowed something unusual. And then the unbelievable happened. While examining the stomach, employees at Red Antler Processing discovered two strange objects buried deep inside the massive reptile. At first glance, they looked like nothing more than worthless old stones. But after experts examined them, they quickly realized these were far from ordinary objects. James Starnes, Director of Geology and Mapping for the Mississippi Department of Environmental Quality, personally identified both items as Native American artifacts dating back thousands of years before Christ. One of the artifacts was an atlatl dart point dating to around 6000 BC. This type of heavy hunting weapon was once used by prehistoric hunters and ancient warriors thousands of years ago. The second artifact was a black spindle-shaped stone dating to roughly 1700 BC. What makes it even more mysterious is that its true purpose remains unknown to this day. Researchers initially believed it may have been connected to fishing or underwater hunting activities, but that is still only a theory. Even now, no one can say with certainty what ancient people actually used it for. And what makes this discovery even harder to believe is the location where the alligator was caught. The Eagle Lake area, where John Hamilton captured the reptile, lies near one of approximately 19,000 prehistoric archaeological sites that have been documented in Mississippi. This suggests that thousands of years ago, the region was once home to numerous ancient Native American communities. It's very possible that while feeding along the bottom of lakes and swamps, the alligator accidentally swallowed artifacts that had remained buried beneath layers of prehistoric mud for thousands of years. But the more people think about it, the more unsettling it becomes, because that would mean that for thousands of years, these ancient predators have silently moved through waters deeply connected to human history. Although scientists are still continuing to study the two mysterious artifacts, the discovery has already shocked many people around the world, not only because of its archaeological value, but also because it proves that alligators truly are terrifying killing machines of nature. They can swallow almost anything that appears before them, from animals and metal objects to secrets buried by ancient civilizations thousands of years ago. Pretty terrifying, isn't it? So what about you? Would you dare hunt a gigantic alligator like that? Or would you run as far away as possible the moment you spotted one lurking in the distance? Leave a comment below and let me see whether you're the kind of fearless person who's afraid of absolutely nothing. 7,000-year-old jade disc found in ancient Chinese tombs holds a secret no one can explain. Did you know that inside ancient tombs buried deep beneath the ground in China, places where darkness has lingered for thousands of years, archaeologists have repeatedly discovered a strange object placed beside the bodies of ancient nobles? These objects are circular jade discs, crafted with astonishing precision, positioned on the forehead, chest, or beneath the feet of the dead, as if they carried some kind of sacred meaning. What makes this discovery so fascinating is that although these jade discs have been found in countless ancient burial sites, scientists still cannot fully explain what they were actually created for. Even more mysterious is the question of how ancient people managed to make them in the first place. Just think about it for a moment. More than 7,000 years ago, during the Neolithic Age, long before modern machinery, advanced cutting tools, or sophisticated technology existed, humans somehow created jade discs so perfectly shaped that it almost seems impossible. Some of them were polished so smoothly that they still reflect light today, even after lying underground for thousands of years. How did they do it? It's incredibly difficult to understand, isn't it? Even modern scientists still don't have a complete answer. What researchers do know is that these mysterious jade discs have been discovered in many aristocratic tombs throughout China, especially in regions connected to the Hongshan culture, which existed from around 3,800 BC to 2,700 BC, and the Liangzhu culture, which lasted from roughly 3000 BC to 2000 BC. That means these artifacts may have existed as early as 5000 BC, an incredibly ancient period in Eastern civilization. One detail that immediately caught researchers' attention was that the placement of the jade discs never appeared random. They were usually positioned at important points on the body, such as the forehead, chest, or beneath the feet of the deceased. Because of this, many experts believe the objects were tied to spiritual beliefs or ancient burial rituals. But the deeper researchers investigate, the greater the mystery becomes. As you may know, jade is an extremely rare and incredibly hard stone. It forms naturally from silicate minerals and has long been used to create valuable jewelry and sacred objects. In its pure form, jade is nearly colorless. But when exposed to certain elements like chromium, it develops the beautiful emerald green color people recognize today. Ancient people divided jade into two main categories, nephrite and jadeite, both famous for being so hard that crafting them is considered extraordinarily difficult, and that is exactly why modern scientists remain puzzled. With Neolithic technology, carving and polishing such hard stone should have been nearly impossible. Yet ancient Chinese craftsmen not only managed to shape it, but also created perfectly balanced circles with remarkably sharp and precise details. Even with modern technology, cutting and polishing jade still requires enormous amounts of time and effort. And yet thousands of years ago, humans accomplished it using only primitive tools. This has led many people to believe that the knowledge and craftsmanship of ancient civilizations may have been far more advanced than we realize today. But the greatest mystery of all is still the true purpose of these strange jade discs. One theory suggests that ancient people believed the discs could guide the souls of the dead into the heavens. That may explain why they were placed on the bodies of nobles as part of a sacred ritual sending the soul into another world. Other researchers believe jade itself was considered a sacred material capable of protecting the body from decay over time. For thousands of years, jade has symbolized purity, power, and eternity throughout Eastern cultures. Because of this, placing jade beside the dead may have represented a desire for immortality in the afterlife. However, there is another theory that many find even more fascinating. Some experts believe the circular shape of the jade discs symbolize the sun or the wheel of time, representing the endless cycle between life and death. For the people of the ancient Liangzhu culture in China, death may not have been seen as an ending. They may have believed that human beings continued on another journey after leaving this world, and the jade disc itself may have symbolized that eternal cycle, a circle with no beginning and no end. That is why the more archaeologists study these ancient tombs, the more they realize that the spiritual world of ancient China was far more complex than anyone once imagined. These jade discs may not have been simple burial objects at all. Perhaps they were sacred ceremonial artifacts used in ancient rituals, or even keys connected to beliefs that vanished from human history thousands of years ago. And even today, as these mysteries continue to emerge from beneath the soil of China, one enormous question still remains unanswered. What message were ancient people truly trying to preserve inside these mysterious jade discs? What do you think the answer might be? Don't hesitate to leave a comment below and share your thoughts with everyone. 1,100-year-old Viking sword emerges from the bottom of an English river. The secrets of the Norse warriors slowly come to light. Hidden deep beneath the cold mud of the River Cherwell in Oxfordshire, England, an ancient weapon had rested silently for more than 1,000 years, as if history itself had forgotten it. No one knew how long it had been there. No one knew who its last owner was. But in late 2023, what seemed like an ordinary search by a fisherman unexpectedly brought an entire piece of Viking history back into the light. And what emerged from the riverbed that day left British archaeologists stunned. It was an ancient Viking sword dating from approximately 850 to 975 AD, an artifact experts described as archaeologically rare. The story began in November 2023 when Trevor Penny, a fisherman living in England, brought magnet fishing equipment to the River Cherwell in Oxfordshire in search of lost metal objects beneath the water. As many of you probably know, magnet fishing has become a popular hobby in many parts of the world. People drop extremely powerful magnets into rivers and lakes, hoping to pull up valuable items such as coins, antiques, or precious metal objects lost many years ago. But Trevor Penny probably never imagined that the trip that day would become a life-changing moment. While pulling his magnet up from the murky waters of the River Cherwell, Penny suddenly felt something extremely heavy attached beneath it. At first, he assumed it was just an old piece of scrap metal lying on the riverbed. But as the object slowly emerged from the water, the friend standing beside him suddenly exclaimed, "It looks like a sword!" In that moment, both men were nearly speechless. Before them was a long sword covered in mud and rust, yet its overall shape remained surprisingly intact despite spending centuries underwater. Trevor Penny later photographed the sword and used Google's image recognition tool to search for similar objects. The results shocked him. The weapon closely resembled swords from the Viking Age. Penny immediately reported the discovery to a local official so archaeologists could properly examine the artifact, and the final analysis confirmed it. This was indeed a genuine Viking sword. According to experts, the sword dates from around 850 to 975 AD, a period when Viking activity in England was at its peak. What makes the artifact especially rare is its remarkable condition. Specialists from the Oxford Museum explain that discovering a Viking sword with so much of its original form preserved is extraordinarily uncommon in archaeology. Normally, metal weapons buried underground or submerged underwater for hundreds of years become almost completely corroded. But the greatest mystery remains unanswered. How did this sword end up at the bottom of the River Cherwell? Did it once belong to a Viking warrior who died in battle? Or was it lost during some ancient conflict long forgotten by history? The more historians study the discovery, the more they realize it serves as extremely important evidence of Viking presence in England during the Middle Ages. More than 1,100 years ago, Viking warriors from the cold lands of Scandinavia crossed the seas aboard their famous longships and arrived in England through raids that terrified much of Europe. Historical records show that the Vikings first set foot in England in 793 AD during the brutal attack on the monastery of Lindisfarne, located off the northeastern coast of England. After that, they continued expanding their raids throughout the region. By around 835 AD, larger Viking fleets began landing along the English coastline, fighting directly against royal armies and seizing vast territories. Throughout the 10th century, English kings gradually reclaimed land from Viking control and united the territories into a new kingdom known as England, the predecessor of modern-day England. However, Viking influence continued well into the 11th century, and it was only after the Battle of Stamford Bridge in 1066, when King Harald III Sigurdsson of Norway was defeated by the Saxons, that the Viking Age truly came to an end. That is why the sword discovered beneath the River Cherwell is not simply an ancient weapon. It is more like a silent witness to an era filled with bloodshed and war, an object once held in the hands of a Viking warrior more than 1,000 years ago, now suddenly returning to the modern world. Pretty fascinating, isn't it? The Lost City Beneath the Atlantic Ocean, a 120,000-year-old mystery that may hold the origins of alien life. Deep beneath the dark waters of the Atlantic Ocean, where sunlight has never reached, there exists a strange world so unbelievable that even scientists once thought it belonged only in science fiction movies. Amid submerged mountain ranges on the ocean floor, gigantic stone towers rise through the darkness like the ruins of a civilization that vanished hundreds of thousands of years ago. Scientists call this place the Lost City. There are no humans living there, no streets, no palaces. But the truly terrifying part is that this place actually exists in the real world, and it may hold the greatest secret about the origin of life on Earth. The Lost City is located on the western side of the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, approximately 2,300 feet beneath the ocean surface. The area was discovered in the year 2000 using remotely operated robotic vehicles designed to explore the deep sea floor. As the cold blue lights from the underwater robot pierced through the darkness of the ocean depths, researchers witnessed a bizarre scene unlike anything they had ever seen before. White and pale blue carbonate rock columns rose everywhere, resembling ancient towers abandoned since prehistoric times. Some were as small as chairs, while others were gigantic structures reaching heights of nearly 200 feet, towering like buildings within the deep abyss of the ocean. The entire area looked exactly like a city buried beneath the sea for tens of thousands of years. And what shocked scientists the most was this: the place was still alive. According to researchers, the hydrothermal system at the Lost City has remained continuously active for at least 120,000 years, and possibly much longer. Throughout that immense span of time, rocks beneath the seafloor have continuously reacted with seawater, producing hydrogen, methane, and other dissolved gases that are released into the ocean. In a place completely without sunlight, with almost no oxygen, and with water pressure strong enough to crush most life forms found on Earth's surface, life still survives in astonishing ways. Hidden within the cracks of the massive stone towers are countless strange microorganisms thriving on hydrocarbons created through chemical reactions beneath the seafloor. That means this ecosystem does not depend on sunlight or plants like life on land does. Instead, it survives using energy generated directly from the Earth itself. The hydrothermal vents continuously release hot fluids reaching temperatures of around 104 degrees Fahrenheit, creating habitats for many creatures including snails, crustaceans, crabs, shrimp, sea urchins, and even eels. Even in such an extreme environment, life continues to thrive as if challenging the very laws of nature. That is exactly why the Lost City has become one of the most extraordinary places ever discovered beneath the ocean. Scientists believe there may still be similar systems hidden somewhere else in the deep sea, but so far, this remains the only site humans have directly discovered and studied using remotely operated robots. What excites scientists most is the way hydrocarbons form in this environment. Normally, life on Earth depends on energy from the sun or carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. But at the Lost City, hydrocarbons are created entirely through chemical reactions occurring beneath the ocean floor, and hydrocarbons are the fundamental building blocks of life itself. In other words, this place may reveal how the very first life on Earth emerged billions of years ago. And the implications go even further than that. Microbiologist William Brazelton from the University of Utah believes this unique ecosystem could serve as a model for extraterrestrial life. He suggests that similar environments may exist on Enceladus, one of Saturn's moons, on Europa, one of Jupiter's moons, or may even have existed on ancient Mars. If life can survive in total darkness beneath Earth's deep oceans, then perhaps somewhere in the vast universe, other organisms may exist in the exact same way. What makes the Lost City especially unique is that it is completely different from ordinary underwater volcanic vents. Most underwater volcanic systems depend on molten magma and produce sulfur and iron-rich minerals. But here, the stone columns generate hydrogen and methane levels roughly 100 times higher. The carbonate rock formations in this region are also much larger than those found in most other hydrothermal systems on Earth, suggesting they have existed far longer. The largest tower in the area was named Poseidon, after the Greek god of the sea, and rises nearly 200 feet tall. Meanwhile, in the northeastern section of the site, mineral circulation has created bizarre branching formations resembling giant stone hands stretching upward from the dark ocean floor. But perhaps the most worrying part of this story is that the Lost City may now face destruction caused by humans. In 2018, Poland obtained mining rights for the deep-sea region surrounding the Lost City. Although the mining activities are not taking place directly on the hydrothermal system itself, scientists warn that even industrial waste or vibrations from nearby operations could destroy this fragile ecosystem entirely. That is why some experts are now calling for the Lost City to be added to the World Heritage List before it is too late. To some people, this discovery may not seem especially important, but when you think about it, for tens of thousands of years, the Lost City has stood as proof of the incredible endurance of life itself. And now, humanity may become the very thing that destroys it. Beef that survived for more than 2,000 years, inside an ancient Chinese tomb, deep beneath the cold earth of Shanxi Province, China, a land that has hidden countless secrets of ancient dynasties. Archaeologists, in 2010, uncovered a tomb from the Warring States period in Wanli village near the city of Xi'an. At first, no one expected the site to reveal anything particularly extraordinary because signs of grave robbers showed that most of the artifacts inside had already been disturbed long ago. But then, an old bronze cauldron hidden in the corner of the tomb caused everyone present to change expression immediately. When the heavy lid was finally opened, what appeared inside was not gold, silver, or precious jade, but pieces of ancient beef that had rested underground for thousands of years. A meal buried during the Warring States period, surviving more than 2,000 years of history, war, climate changes, and the relentless decay of time, yet somehow still leaving traces behind to this day. The discovery completely stunned Chinese archaeologists. According to experts, the tomb discovered in Xi'an, a city in Shanxi Province, China, dates back to the Warring States period, the era before the Qin dynasty unified ancient China. Although the tomb had been looted long ago, leaving many burial objects scattered or missing, the remarkable bronze cauldron fortunately remained relatively intact, and it was this very cauldron that preserved one of the strangest discoveries ever connected to ancient food. When researchers examined the inside of the vessel, they identified multiple pieces of beef that had been altered over time. Most of the meat had become carbonized, meaning it had undergone environmental changes and decomposition over thousands of years. However, what shocked everyone was that some portions still retained a relatively recognizable shape. That immediately raised a series of questions. How could beef survive for such a long time? What preservation methods did ancient people use? Or was the bronze cauldron hiding some secret we still do not fully understand? According to archaeologists, during China's Warring States period, beef was considered an extremely rare and valuable food. At that time, cattle were primarily used for farming and plowing fields, so slaughtering cows for meat was far less common than it is today. Because of that, placing beef inside a tomb strongly suggests that the tomb's owner may have been someone of very high social status. The meat was not simply food, it also symbolized wealth and power. And if you look closely at many ancient civilizations around the world, people often buried food, wine, and everyday objects with the dead because they believed the deceased would continue existing in another world. Perhaps the person buried in this tomb was also being prepared with a final meal for the journey into the afterlife. But what continues to puzzle scientists most is the extraordinary preservation of the meat itself. To explain it, experts have proposed several different theories. One theory suggests that ancient people may have dried the beef before placing it inside the bronze cauldron. Drying removes moisture from meat, limiting bacterial growth and significantly extending preservation time. That idea seems reasonable, because thousands of years ago, humans already understood methods such as air drying and smoking food to preserve it longer. But that is not the only explanation. Other researchers believe the sealed environment inside the tomb played the most important role. After burial, the tomb may have been completely sealed off, preventing outside air from entering. An oxygen-poor environment like that would dramatically slow the natural decomposition process. In addition, the bronze cauldron itself may have functioned as a kind of ancient preservation container. Copper and bronze have long been known to possess antibacterial properties and resistance to environmental damage. Because of that, it is possible that the vessel itself helped protect the meat from the destructive effects of time. Even though scientists still have not reached a final conclusion, the discovery has opened the door to many new mysteries surrounding ancient Chinese civilization, because it suggests that people more than 2,000 years ago may have possessed surprisingly advanced knowledge about food preservation. As you can see, sometimes the things that make history most fascinating are not treasures made of gold or precious jewels. Sometimes it is the smallest and most ordinary objects, like a few old pieces of beef resting inside an ancient bronze cauldron, because hidden behind them is an entire story about the daily life, beliefs, and intelligence of ancient people's secrets that slept beneath the soil of China for thousands of years. 2,000-year-old skeleton. Found clutching a medical kit when the city was buried. As you know, history is fascinating. There are secrets that once seemed as if they had been buried forever beneath the ashes of time, yet one day they suddenly reappear, leaving the entire archaeological world in shock. And this time, what astonished researchers was not gold, not statues, and not ancient treasure, but a medical kit belonging to a man who died nearly 2,000 years ago. A man who may have been a physician in ancient Rome, someone who carried his profession with him until the very last moments of his life. This strange story was discovered in the ancient city of Pompeii in Italy, a place famous for its time-frozen ruins. Even more remarkably, the man's remains were found in an area known as the Garden of the Fugitives, once a final refuge for many ancient victims. And what makes people even more curious is that beside his skeleton, archaeologists discovered a metal medical box, still containing many intact tools, despite having been buried under volcanic ash for nearly 2 millennia. According to archaeological studies published in recent years, this man was one of 13 victims who died while trying to find shelter. But instead of carrying gold or valuables while fleeing, he chose to bring his medical instruments with him. This led scientists to believe that he may have been a medicus, the Latin term for a physician. At this point, many people might wonder, why in a life-or-death moment did he still hold on to that medical kit so tightly? Was he trying to save others? Or did he simply want to preserve his profession in hopes of starting a new life elsewhere if he survived? These questions are still unanswered by experts at the Archaeological Park of Pompeii. However, Gabriel Zuchtriegel, the director of the Archaeological Park, suggests that the man may have been carrying the tools in order to continue practicing medicine elsewhere. But he also does not rule out the possibility that the physician attempted to help those around him during the chaos. And do you know what makes this discovery even more remarkable? Inside the ancient medical box, archaeologists found small metal instruments believed to have been used for surgical procedures. There was also a slate stone plate, possibly used for grinding or preparing medicinal compounds. Even more astonishingly, the box was secured with a sophisticated gear-like locking mechanism, showing that Roman engineering and medical knowledge were far more advanced than many people would expect. Experts believe this man may have been formally trained in medicine and surgery. In ancient Rome, the profession of physician was both highly respected and deeply feared. Wealthy citizens valued medical care, but they were extremely afraid of surgery, since there were no antibiotics or modern sterilization methods at the time. Even a minor operation could lead to infection and death. In addition, during the Roman era, some Greek-born slaves were trained as medical professionals to serve the elite class. Because of this, the true identity of this man remains a major mystery. Was he a free physician? A doctor serving wealthy nobles? Or simply someone with basic medical knowledge trying to save lives during a disaster? What do you think the answer is? Feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments below. The ancient Roman bath system in Pompeii. In many people's imagination, Roman civilization is closely associated with an image of extreme advancement and sophistication. Massive architectural works, advanced aqueduct systems, and luxurious public bathhouses were once considered the pride of the empire. However, few would expect that behind this glamorous appearance lies a reality that can feel unsettling to modern people. You know, more than 2,000 years ago, before Mount Vesuvius erupted, dozens, even hundreds of people would enter a shared pool every day to bathe together. They believed it was a place for relaxation, cleansing the body, and expressing social status. However, the water they immersed themselves in could have been filled with bacteria, sediment, and even toxic metals. This shocking secret was revealed through a study conducted by archaeological experts in Pompeii, the famous ancient city in Italy. In particular, the findings, published on January 12 in the scientific journal PNAS, surprised many people regarding the true sanitary conditions of early Roman bathhouses. The study, led by geoarchaeologist Gül Sürmelihindi from Johannes Gutenberg University in Mainz, Germany, analyzed layers of calcium carbonate deposits found inside an ancient public bath complex in Pompeii. These seemingly insignificant deposits actually preserved traces of the water that Romans used thousands of years ago, and the results left researchers stunned. According to the study, the oldest baths in Pompeii, used between approximately 130 BC and 30 BC, had sanitary conditions that were completely different from what many people might imagine. At that time, the city had not yet developed a fully integrated aqueduct system like it did in later periods. The water supply for these bathhouses mainly came from wells and large storage basins. What is particularly notable is that water transportation largely depended on slaves. As a result, the water supply was limited and could not be refreshed continuously. According to Sürmelihindi, the water in these public baths may have been changed only once per day. At this point, many people might already start to feel uncomfortable, right? Just think about it. Dozens of people soaking in the same pool all day long under the hot climate of ancient southern Italy, while the water was rarely replaced. This means dirt, sweat, and countless bacteria could continuously accumulate in the bathing pools. But that is not even the most disturbing part. There is something even more alarming. Further chemical analysis of the deposits revealed signs of heavy metal contamination in the water. Specifically, lead levels in the bathhouse were abnormally high. This was believed to come from the lead piping system, material that the Romans widely used in ancient times. Today we know that lead is extremely toxic to the human body, especially with long-term exposure. But in ancient Roman times, people were completely unaware of this danger. To them, those metal pipes were simply symbols of modernity and convenience. Interestingly, this discovery has changed how researchers view everyday life in ancient Roman society. For a long time, Roman public baths were seen as a symbol of extraordinary civilization and progress. However, new research from Pompeii suggests that in their early stages, these bathhouses may not have been as clean or safe as previously believed. Even so, experts agree that bathing culture still played a crucial role in Roman life. As the empire expanded and aqueduct systems improved in later periods, sanitary conditions significantly improved. Still, the remains found in Pompeii act like a time capsule, allowing modern humans to glimpse the hidden, darker side of one of the most celebrated civilizations of the ancient world. Both terrifying and fascinating, don't you think? The remains of a prison bakery, where ancient slaves were forced to work until death. Some of history's secrets are not written in ancient books, but buried beneath layers of ash for thousands of years, waiting for the day they are uncovered and reveal the terrifying truth about the ancient world. A powerful example of this was recently discovered in the ancient city of Pompeii, where archaeologists uncovered a site that even experienced researchers found deeply disturbing. It was a dark, suffocating space with almost no trace of freedom, where human beings once lived like forgotten shadows erased from history. This discovery was announced while experts were studying a large area of about 11 acres inside the ancient city. At first, it appeared to be a normal Roman industrial facility, but the deeper they dug, the more they realized that behind those old stone walls lay a chilling story about the lives of enslaved people more than 2,000 years ago. According to archaeologists, this site was once an ancient bakery, a place that produced food for the city's inhabitants. But behind this seemingly ordinary name was an incredibly harsh system of labor. Slaves and donkeys were forced to work continuously every single day, turning massive stone mills used to grind grain into flour. Just imagine inside an enclosed space with little light, the grinding of stone echoing endlessly for hours on end. Humans and animals were forced to move in circles day after day like living machines. No one knows exactly how long they lived like this, but the traces left in the stone floors tell the entire story. Just these details alone are enough to send a chill down anyone's spine, and it does not end there. During the excavation, researchers also discovered deep circular grooves carved into the ancient flooring. According to experts, these marks were left by donkeys that were forced to walk continuously around the mill for long periods of time. What is even more disturbing is that the animals may have been blindfolded, so they would not realize they were endlessly circling inside a confined space. Just hearing that alone is already suffocating enough, isn't it? But what haunted archaeologists the most was not just the footprints. It was the truth about the people who were once trapped inside this place. According to Gabriel Zachtriegel, the director of the Pompeii Archaeological Park, this discovery has revealed a brutal and dark side of Roman slavery. The people working here were almost completely stripped of their freedom. They labored under harsh conditions every day, trapped in confinement and violence, with almost no chance of escaping their fate. Experts believe the owner of this facility deliberately restricted the movement of enslaved workers to prevent them from having any contact with the outside world. This turned the site into a true labor prison, where humans were confined solely for production. But the excavation revealed yet another secret that made the atmosphere even heavier. Inside one of the rooms of this ancient bakery, archaeologists found 3 human skeletons. No one knows exactly who they were. They may have been enslaved workers who labored there, or they may have been individuals who were trapped while trying to escape. But what sends chills down the spine is the fact that their positions suggest they died inside the very place that had held them captive for so long. To this day, experts are still studying the remains to determine the exact cause of death and the connection between these 3 skeletons and the ancient production site. Although no definitive answers have been found, each bone, each small trace left behind, feels like a final fragment of memory from people who once existed, but were forgotten by history. And perhaps the most terrifying truth is not the skeletons themselves, but the fact that for thousands of years, no one ever knew that beneath the ashes, people had died without ever experiencing freedom. Do you think so too? Woman found, clutching her treasure for 2,000 years beneath the ashes of Pompeii. Deep beneath the ancient ruins of Pompeii, Italy, there was a room that had remained completely silent for nearly 2,000 years. No one knew what had once happened inside it, until a recent excavation by archaeologists unexpectedly revealed 2 skeletons lying within a space sealed by ash and ancient debris. You know, the moment the final layer of soil was removed, the research team realized they had not simply found ordinary bones, but the preserved trace of a tragedy buried for millennia. The excavation was led by Gabriel Zuchtriegel, director of the Pompeii Archaeological Park, along with his colleagues. The discovery site was located in an area known as Regio 9, part of the famous ancient city of Pompeii in southern Italy. And it was in a room called Room 33 that the researchers were confronted with a heartbreaking scene. On a small bed placed against the wall lay the remains of a woman between 35 and 45 years old. What disturbed archaeologists the most was her posture. Her body was curled up in a fetal position, as if in her final moments she had tried to shrink into herself in fear and despair. Not far away, beneath the collapsed stones of a fallen wall, lay the skeleton of a young man, approximately 20 years old. Even just the positions of the two bodies were enough for researchers to imagine the chaos that had unfolded inside this room nearly 2 millennia ago. According to experts, this room was initially not yet filled with volcanic pumice. Because of that, it is highly likely that the two had rushed inside seeking shelter when the disaster suddenly struck Pompeii. In that moment, they may have believed they had found a safe place to survive. But everything quickly turned into a nightmare. As the neighboring areas were rapidly filled with pumice and ash, their only escape route disappeared. The two were completely trapped inside the narrow space with no way out. Outside, thick clouds of ash, scorching air, and the sound of collapsing structures filled the city. Inside the small room, two desperate people could only wait for the worst to come. Based on the several inches of ash covering the floor, researchers believe the cause of death may have been a pyroclastic surge, a fast-moving, extremely destructive flow of superheated gas and volcanic material. This surge is thought to have caused the wall to suddenly collapse onto the young man, killing him instantly. But what makes the story even more heartbreaking is that the woman may not have died immediately. Experts believe that after the wall collapsed, she survived for a short time longer. She remained on the small bed in the dark room, quietly waiting for her final moments to arrive. And then, during the excavation, archaeologists made a discovery that left everyone stunned. Surrounding the woman's remains were scattered gold, silver, and bronze coins. In addition, several valuable pieces of jewelry were still found beside her, even after nearly 2,000 years underground. Among the artifacts, the most remarkable were a pair of gold and pearl earrings known as crotalia, a famous type of jewelry in ancient Rome. The name crotalia means clattering, referring to the sound made when the pearls gently struck each other as the wearer moved. Next to her was also a protective amulet pendant, an object that ancient Romans believed could safeguard women during childbirth. From all the evidence found in the room, researchers concluded that the woman may have tried to gather her most valuable possessions in an attempt to escape the disaster. Perhaps in those final chaotic moments, she still believed that if she survived the night, she could start a new life elsewhere. But in the end, the gold, jewelry, and treasures she carried were not enough to save her from fate. A truly heartbreaking discovery. The mysterious chest that contained the strange possessions of an ancient witch. In the world of archaeology, there are discoveries that immediately silence the entire room the moment they are unearthed. Not because of the gold or material value inside them, but because of the overwhelming sense of mystery surrounding the object, as if it is holding a piece of history that modern humans have never truly understood. And that was exactly the feeling experienced by experts when they discovered a strange ancient chest during an excavation in the city of Pompeii. The chest was buried deep beneath the ruins of an ancient house, hidden for nearly 2,000 years underground. No one knew who its owner was. No one knew why it had been concealed so carefully. But the moment the lid was opened, archaeologists realized they had just uncovered a deeply mysterious and almost mystical corner of the ancient Roman world. This remarkable discovery was made by experts from the National Museum of Italy during recent excavations in Pompeii. At first, they assumed it was just an ordinary storage box left behind in the ancient ruins. However, what they found inside shocked researchers. The team uncovered a variety of gemstones, including amethyst and amber, materials that ancient people believed could protect against evil spirits and bring good fortune. There was also a scarab-shaped amulet originating from the Near East, an object commonly associated with ancient religious beliefs and spiritual practices. Inside the chest, they also found a finely carved agate stone depicting a craftsman. And most striking of all was a glass bead necklace featuring the head of Dionysus, the ancient Greek god of wine, celebration, and fertility. Just hearing this already makes it feel like the chest was less of a personal storage box and more like a collection of ritual objects used in ancient mystical practices, doesn't it? And that is exactly what researchers believe. According to experts from the National Museum of Italy, these items were very likely used in ancient spiritual rituals. As a result, many archaeologists suggest that the owner of the chest may have been a woman involved in mysterious religious ceremonies in Roman society. Massimo Ossana, director of the Pompeii Archaeological Site, noted that most of the artifacts found inside the chest are closely associated with feminine identity and ritual practices. This has led researchers to believe that the chest once belonged to a woman who played a special role in the spiritual life of that time. What is particularly interesting is that the items inside were not luxurious jewelry meant for wealthy elites. Instead, they were objects tied to symbolism, belief, and ancient ritual practices. And that is exactly what makes this discovery so unusual. Nearly 2,000 years ago in Pompeii, Italy, there may have been people quietly performing rituals that today we only see in myths and legends. They used amulets for protection, gemstones as spiritual tools, and believed that gods could influence human fate. For a long time, many people believed that Roman society was defined mainly by wars, gladiator arenas, and monumental architecture. But this strange chest reveals something different. Beneath the grandeur existed a hidden world of spiritual beliefs that history has rarely fully told. Even today, the true identity of the chest's owner remains a major mystery to archaeologists. Who was this woman? Why did she possess so many spiritual objects? And were these items truly used in ancient mystical rituals? The answers are still unknown. But perhaps it is that very mystery that makes this chest, discovered in Pompeii, one of the most fascinating archaeological finds ever unearthed. Because sometimes, the most frightening thing is not what we can see, but the secrets that have been sleeping for thousands of years, still waiting to be fully understood. Ancient graffiti that recreated a forgotten way of life. If one day the entire internet suddenly disappeared, what do you think would remain to tell future generations how we once lived? Perhaps it would be our status updates, arguments, jokes, or the random sketches we leave behind every day. And what is truly astonishing is that nearly 2,000 years ago, the ancient Romans in the city of Pompeii, Italy, did something very similar. Not on phones, not on social media, but on stone walls across their city. Why do I say this? Because in recent archaeological excavations in Pompeii, experts from the University of Warwick unexpectedly discovered thousands of ancient graffiti still clearly visible on the walls of many buildings. At first, many thought these were just meaningless marks left by time, but the more researchers studied them, the more they realized they were actually reading the real voices of ordinary Roman people. Just imagine nearly 2 millennia ago, on the busy streets of Pompeii, people would stop right in the middle of the road to write their thoughts on the walls. Some wrote to support the politicians they liked. Others used the walls to criticize their opponents, and some simply wanted to leave behind a joke that would make passersby laugh. What does all of this tell us? What is special is that these writings are nothing like the formal historical records we usually read today. They are casual, personal, and at times, they feel just like reading modern social media comments. According to the research team from the University of Warwick, the walls of Pompeii contain all kinds of content. There were election slogans painted to encourage people to vote for certain candidates. There were public accusations and insults, almost like open verbal battles between citizens of the city. There were also humorous poems and witty jokes written in the playful style of the ancient Romans. But what fascinated archaeologists the most were the children's drawings. During the research, they discovered simple sketches of gladiators. These drawings are believed to have been made by children after watching arena battles. Even though they are just rough sketches, they show that children in ancient Rome were curious, idolized heroes, and loved gladiator fights, just like children today. Hearing this, many people might feel surprised, right? Because it turns out that even though we are separated by nearly 2,000 years, humans are still remarkably similar in many ways. According to experts, some graffiti was written quickly by people passing by, but others were carefully crafted, with clear structure and artistic detail. This shows that not all graffiti was just casual scribbling. For many people, it was a way to express themselves publicly. What is even more interesting is that the people who left graffiti in Pompeii came from all walks of life. Wealthy landowners, Merchants, farmers, soldiers, laborers, and even freed slaves all contributed their voices to the city's stone walls. Because of this, researchers believe that Pompeii's graffiti is like an ancient version of social media. It allowed people to create messages, share thoughts, and respond to one another in a public space. The only difference is that today we use Facebook, TikTok, or Instagram to express ourselves, while the people of Pompeii used the walls around them to do the same thing. And what is truly remarkable is that for nearly 2,000 years, these writings have survived, as if the ancient people were sending messages directly to the modern world. So this discovery not only helps archaeologists better understand daily life in ancient Rome, but also reminds us that history is not only written by emperors and wars. Sometimes, the most honest record of a civilization is a simple joke on a wall, a child's drawing, or a quick message written by an ordinary person nearly 2 millennia ago. And perhaps that is exactly what makes Pompeii so extraordinary. 2,000-year-old royal chariot reveals the luxurious secrets of the ancient Roman Empire. Some discoveries in archaeology don't just astonish researchers, they make history feel as if it is coming back to life right before our eyes. And that is exactly what happened when archaeologists uncovered an ancient Roman chariot that had remained nearly intact for almost 2,000 years beneath the ground. The moment the final layers of ash and volcanic debris were carefully removed, a strange and breathtaking scene slowly emerged under the excavation lights. Ancient wheels covered in centuries of dust, metal components still attached to the frame, intricate decorative patterns that had survived remarkably well despite the passage of millennia. For a few seconds, the experts stood in silence, because what lay before them was not an ordinary vehicle used by everyday Romans. It was a luxurious ceremonial chariot that once belonged to the Roman aristocracy. This extraordinary discovery was made during an emergency rescue excavation in Pompeii, carried out by archaeologists from the Pompeii Archaeological Park in collaboration with the Public Prosecutor's Office of Torre Annunziata. What makes the story even more dramatic is the situation in which it was found. Authorities had discovered that ancient artifact thieves had been secretly digging tunnels underground, attempting to loot buried treasures from the ancient city. If the excavation had been delayed even slightly, this rare chariot could have been destroyed or lost forever on the international black market. Because of this, the research team was effectively racing against time. They dug approximately 20 feet through layers of ash and ancient volcanic material. And then, inside a 2-level arched structure, they uncovered an ancient Roman ceremonial chariot known as a palentum, an extremely rare vehicle used in grand ceremonies of the Roman elite. What shocked the world the most was its incredible state of preservation. All 4 wheels still retained their original structure. Several iron components remained intact. There were also finely crafted decorations made of bronze and tin. Archaeologists even found mineralized wooden parts, along with traces of reins and floral ornaments that once adorned the chariot. Just imagining it is enough to understand how luxurious it must have been, right? But what surprised researchers even more was what they found around the chariot. Nearby, they discovered the remains of an ancient stable along with the skeletons of 3 Roman horses. One of them still bore traces of a harness on its body. This detail suggests that the chariot was likely used in important ceremonies involving specially trained horses. According to archaeologists, this was not a vehicle used for transporting goods or everyday travel. Its design was far too elaborate and luxurious. Therefore, it is highly likely that it was used in major festivals, religious ceremonies, or grand parades of the Roman aristocracy. Another intriguing theory is that the chariot may have been used in ancient Roman wedding ceremonies. Some experts suggest it could have been the vehicle that escorted a bride to her new home, a highly significant ritual in ancient marriage traditions. Of course, this is still only a hypothesis. The true purpose of the chariot remains unknown. So what do you think it was used for? If you have an idea, feel free to leave a comment below and share your thoughts with everyone. The slave's small room. Among the luxurious marble statues, grand halls paved with polished stone, and endless lavish banquets in Roman villas, there remained a silent dark reality: the lives of enslaved people. And recently, a groundbreaking archaeological discovery near Pompeii has shed new light on that hidden and deeply unsettling world. At the Civita Juliana Villa, located about 650 yards north of the ruins of Pompeii, an area completely wiped out by the catastrophic eruption of Mount Vesuvius nearly 2,000 years ago, archaeologists uncovered a small room once used by enslaved people. This discovery offers a vivid and emotional glimpse into the lives of the lowest class in ancient Roman society. The room itself was far from luxurious. In fact, it was so simple that it leaves a deep silence in the imagination when trying to picture the people who once lived there. Inside, researchers found 2 wooden beds, only one of which had a mattress, a small but telling detail that reveals even inequality existed among servants themselves. The room also contained 2 small cabinets, a few ceramic jars, and various everyday objects, showing that this was not only a place for sleeping but also for living and storing essential belongings, all within a cramped, dark, and damp space. One of the most haunting discoveries was the presence of rodent bones inside the room, clear evidence of the poor sanitary conditions the enslaved people endured, even within the household of an elite Roman villa. Even more striking, archaeologists found the impression of a crumpled blanket still preserved on the surface of a bed frame. What was once soft fabric is now only a faint trace, preserved for nearly 2 millennia by volcanic ash and heat from Vesuvius. Gabriel Zuchtriegel, director of the Pompeii Archaeological Park, described it by saying, "It looks like a photograph, but this is an image from nearly 2,000 years ago. A moment of everyday life, seemingly swallowed by time, has reappeared with striking emotional clarity." What makes this room particularly unusual is the absence of chains, locks, or restraints, items commonly associated with controlling enslaved people in the ancient world. This has led researchers to believe that supervision and discipline did not always rely on physical confinement. Instead, it may have been enforced through an internal hierarchy among the enslaved themselves, where individuals monitored and controlled one another, creating a self-regulating system within an oppressed group. The feeling of being watched, judged, and controlled by fellow sufferers made freedom feel like something almost unimaginable. This discovery once again highlights that although Pompeii is often seen as a symbol of Roman wealth, sophistication, and cultural achievement, behind its glamorous surface lay a reality marked by inequality, social hierarchy, and exploitation. The enslaved people lived their entire lives confined to just a few square meters, silently serving the luxury of their masters. They left no names in history books and no statues in their honor. But their legacy survives in the smallest traces: wooden beds, worn blankets, and everyday objects preserved in ash. Pompeii, buried for thousands of years beneath volcanic ash, continues to tell its stories. These are not only stories of temples, frescoes, or Roman gods, but also of ordinary people living under the harshness of fate, lying awake in dark rooms, listening to the distant sounds of their master's world of luxury. They had no choice in how they lived, yet the traces they left behind, even something as simple as a thin blanket, are enough to make the modern world pause and reflect. The mysterious black room with Trojan myth frescoes that astonish the world. Hidden deep within the ancient ruins of Pompeii, there is a room that, the moment archaeological lights illuminated it, made experts feel as if they had stepped directly into the world of ancient Greek mythology. Dark, mysterious black walls, nearly perfectly preserved mythological paintings, and an eerie atmosphere that makes the space feel like an ancient stage frozen in time for almost 2,000 years. Archaeologists have given it a mysterious name: the Black Room. This remarkable discovery was made during ongoing excavations at the Pompeii Archaeological Park, one of the most famous archaeological sites in the world. The room is located inside a private ancient villa on Via di Nola, one of the longest streets in ancient Pompeii. From the moment the soil and debris were removed, experts were stunned by the beauty of this large banquet hall. The walls were painted in deep black and covered with stunning frescoes depicting famous figures from mythology connected to the Trojan War. One of the most striking frescoes shows the meeting between Helen and Paris, the Trojan prince and son of King Priam. Interestingly, the painting also includes a Greek inscription naming him Alexandros, another name for Paris in mythology. According to ancient Greek legend, Paris's abduction of Helen from Sparta enraged her husband Menelaus, sparking the famous Trojan War around the 12th century BC. But that was not the most haunting painting in the room. Another fresco depicts the god Apollo attempting to pursue Cassandra, the daughter of King Priam. In the painting, Cassandra appears deeply sorrowful and distant. According to Greek mythology, Apollo promised Cassandra the gift of prophecy if she accepted his love. Cassandra agreed, but later rejected him. Enraged, Apollo placed a cruel curse upon her. She would always be able to see the future, but no one would ever believe her words. Because of this curse, she was forced to witness the fall of Troy, powerless to stop it despite foreseeing the disaster. Just hearing this is enough to feel how deeply the mythological atmosphere fills this room, isn't it? But the discoveries did not stop there. Archaeologists also found another fresco depicting Leda, the mother of Helen of Troy, embracing a white swan. Dr. Andrew Sillett from the University of Oxford explained that the swan is actually Zeus, the ruler of Mount Olympus in Greek mythology. According to legend, Zeus disguised himself as a swan to approach and seduce Leda. She later gave birth to an egg, which hatched into the famous twins Castor and Polydeuces. Dr. Sillett described these frescoes as truly extraordinary, noting that they were likely completed shortly before Pompeii was buried in 79 AD. According to Gabriel Zuchtriegel, director of the Pompeii Archaeological Park, the Black Room was designed as a luxurious banquet space for the Roman elite. The mythological images were not just decoration, they were conversation pieces during evening gatherings. He explained that at night, flickering oil lamps would make the painted figures appear almost alive, especially after a few glasses of famous Campanian wine from ancient Italy. Just imagine the scene. A room about 50 feet long and 20 feet wide, mysterious black walls reflecting the faint glow of oil lamps. Distinguished guests dining and discussing Trojan mythology in a space that feels like a dream from the ancient world. What is truly astonishing is that the floor of the room was intricately mosaicked with more than 1 million tiny white tiles arranged into complex geometric patterns. Meanwhile, near the staircase, researchers also discovered charcoal drawings depicting gladiators as well as a strange stylized figure. Pompeii, Italy, was buried for nearly 1,700 years before being rediscovered in 1748. And even today, every excavation seems to open another doorway into the ancient Roman world. And the Black Room, with its Trojan myth frescoes, is perhaps one of the most mysterious of them all, a place where history, art, and mythology blend together in the darkness of a city that slept for nearly 2 millennia. The mysterious missing skull of Pompeii's hero. Did you know that among the thousands of skeletons discovered in the ruins of Pompeii, there is one skull that has sparked debate among archaeologists for more than a century? Many believe it may belong to a legendary figure of ancient Rome, a man who did not flee from disaster but instead rushed into it to save others. That man is Pliny the Elder, the famous historian and Roman naval commander, often referred to as the hero of Pompeii. However, what makes the story strange is that for nearly 2,000 years, no one knew exactly where his remains were located. Now, a skull preserved in a museum in Italy has suddenly drawn intense attention from researchers as it may be the long-lost remains of this legendary commander. According to historical records written by Pliny the Younger, the nephew of Pliny the Elder, the Roman naval commander was stationed with the Roman fleet in the Bay of Naples in southern Italy at the time. When news of the disaster reached him, he immediately ordered his ships to sail toward the danger zone to help evacuate civilians. This was not a required mission. It was not an act of self-preservation. He chose to turn toward death itself in order to save others. But in the end, Pliny the Elder was unable to escape the catastrophic eruption. He died along with thousands of Pompeii's residents in 79 AD, and for nearly 2 millennia after that, the true location of his remains remained one of archaeology's great mysteries, until the year 1900. During an excavation in the ancient city of Pompeii, researchers discovered around 70 skeletons scattered across a devastated area. Among them, one set of remains immediately drew special attention. This skeleton was found alongside valuable items such as gold bracelets, necklaces, and rings. Because of this, Italian engineer Gennaro Matrone, the leader of the excavation, believed that these could be the remains of Pliny the Elder. In his view, Pliny's high rank in the Roman military and his historical importance could explain the presence of such valuable jewelry near the skeleton. At first glance, the theory seems reasonable, doesn't it? But then the debate began. Other archaeologists, including Giuseppe Cosenza, strongly opposed this idea. They argued that Pliny the Elder was a serious and disciplined Roman naval commander, and there was no reason for him to be buried with such extravagant jewelry. This disagreement left the identity of the skeleton deeply uncertain. Was it truly the remains of Pompeii's hero? Or was it simply another wealthy individual mistakenly linked to him for over a century? Because of this ongoing controversy, Italian researchers have recently planned isotope testing on the skull preserved in the museum in order to determine its true age and origin. If the results confirm that the skull does belong to Pliny the Elder, it would become one of the most significant archaeological discoveries related to Pompeii in recent years. After nearly 2,000 years, humanity may finally rediscover the remains of a man who risked everything by entering a disaster zone to save innocent lives. A truly heroic act, but until the results are confirmed, all we can do is wait. Roman warhorse. Frozen for 2,000 years. Some archaeological discoveries make it feel as if history never truly died. It is simply lying silent somewhere underground, waiting to be uncovered. And in the ancient city of Pompeii, Italy, archaeologists have touched exactly that kind of moment. Not a golden statue, not a treasure chest, but the remains of an ancient Roman warhorse, a creature that once galloped through the glory days of the Roman Empire, now reappearing after nearly 2,000 years buried beneath thick volcanic ash. What makes this discovery even more unusual is how it began. It started with illegal, dark tunnels dug by tomb raiders beneath Pompeii. While searching for valuable artifacts to sell, these treasure hunters accidentally revealed an unusual empty space in the Civita Giuliana area, north of Pompeii, Italy. And that very place led archaeologists to a discovery that stunned the entire research community. As layers of soil and debris were carefully removed, the skeleton of an ancient horse slowly emerged under the excavation lights. According to archaeologists, the remains were found inside a stable located next to an ancient villa in Civita Giuliana. What immediately caught their attention was the size and structure of the animal. It was significantly larger than the typical working horses of Roman times. Because of this, researchers believe it may have been a warhorse used in military parades or belonging to a wealthy Roman aristocrat. In ancient Roman society, warhorses were not just means of transportation. They symbolized power, authority, and social status. The finest horses were reserved for military commanders and high-ranking elites. What is truly remarkable is that even after nearly 2,000 years, many details of the skeleton were still preserved thanks to the thick layer of volcanic ash that covered the entire area. But the discovery did not stop there. Right next to the horse's remains, archaeologists also found the skeleton of a man aged approximately 40 to 50 years old. He is believed to have died during the catastrophic eruption of 79 AD. Was this man the owner of the horse, or was he the caretaker of the warhorse in the final days of Pompeii? No one knows for sure, but the image of the two remains lying side by side gives the haunting impression that they may have shared their final moments together in what was once an ancient stable. According to archaeologists, this is just one of roughly 2,000 victims believed to have been buried in Pompeii in 79 AD. Over the years, continuous excavations have uncovered more skeletons and remarkably preserved traces of daily life in ancient Roman society. Thanks to these discoveries, scientists are gradually able to reconstruct what life was truly like for the people of Pompeii before the city disappeared from the ancient world. How they lived in their homes, what they ate every day, what diseases they suffered from, and even how they struggled to survive in their final terrifying moments. Today, researchers continue to study and restore the remains of both the horse and the man found in Civita Giuliana, Pompeii, hoping these traces will help unlock even more secrets of ancient Roman society. But perhaps the most haunting part of this discovery is the feeling that, beneath all that volcanic ash, time never truly moved on. The warhorse is still there, the man is still there, and an entire ancient Roman world still sleeps beneath the ground of Pompeii, waiting for modern humanity to slowly awaken the stories that history forgot for nearly 2,000 years. Dear friends, what we have just seen is only a very small part of the thousands of mysteries still lying silently beneath the ground of Pompeii, Italy. Each discovery is like a scattered puzzle piece, but when they are put together, they reveal a strange and fascinating picture of life, death, and the final moments of an ancient civilization. And the most terrifying part is that there may still be countless untouched secrets waiting to be awakened. So what about you? What do you think is the most haunting discovery we explored today? Leave your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss any of the next incredible discoveries from the Ancient History channel. And for now, goodbye, and see you next time.